We actually saw a Led Zeppelin song as the time of this recording, Ben, I think 5 days ago, 4 days ago. We saw a Led Zeppelin song live, of course, not by the band themselves. Do you want to kind of clue our listeners into our, first, the song we heard, and secondly, this summer tradition that is miles away musically from Led Zeppelin in most respects?
Yeah. What's up? We're back.
It's been a while.
Been
For
a while.
us.
Our episodes 3 and 4 to our audience, to our listeners, was back to back, but perfectly spaced. Our recording for us has been a couple weeks now.
A month almost. It was May, I checked.
Yeah, geez, almost a month. So it's been a little bit. Some happenings between then and now. Obviously, as we alluded to a couple podcasts ago, Schmiggy here traveled across the pond with his lovely wife, all in the midst of this. And less than 12 hours upon Schmiggy's return to the States, he hopped in a car and drove down to St. Louis to meet me for a Dave Matthews Band concert in St. Louis. To kick the summer off in proper form. Just the two of us with some of our lovely friends that we've been going to Dave with for over 20 years now. So it's always an amazing thing to collectively get together in a city that isn't yours, pick up right where you left off. We for the record, don't really talk online much. As Dave season kicks in gear, we kind of have a massive group thread that we talk about tickets and tailgate plans. But other than that, our group of friends that are in the Dave world are our friends in Dave world, and then we kind of bounce out. But it just goes to show that that kind of thing still exists in life. But nonetheless, to answer your question, Smiggy, Fool in the Rain.
Fool in the Rain, which we will not talk about on this podcast at the time of this recording. Let's see, this is 3 albums away. But Dave Matthews Band has been doing this for a few years. I saw the debut of Fool in the Rain at Alpine in 2022 or 23. Out of left field. And it was one of those things that you thought, they got a keyboard player. They got all the instruments needed to really kill it. I think they did. I think it's one of their best covers. And as a Zeppelin fan, it's a dream because Dave is our summer tradition. And now we're melding in my favorite band of all time. And they do a very faithful interpretation of it. I mean, it is basically note for note. Tim Reynolds plays that really deep guitar solo that Jimmy Page does on the record, note for note. So I thought it was great. And we were actually leaving the venue when they did the Stairway to Heaven part of All Along the Watchtower because we were trying to get back to the hotel. We've seen that a bajillion times. But yeah, it was a great way to kick off the summer proper, as you said, after my trip across the pond. And yeah, we'd arrived on a Friday evening, and then by Saturday at lunchtime, I was already driving down to St. Louis. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, what better welcome back to America moment?
No doubt. And that's like, in terms of covers for Dave Matthews, it does hit number one. They do it justice. They also do the Watchtower Stairway
interpolation, however you'd say it.
Justice. And I would have to give, if we're giving quick MVPs out, the MVPs of both of those go to Timmy, because without him, it wouldn't totally resonate, but he can just shred. So definitely awesome. And that was actually my first Fool in the Rain live.
Yeah. Well, unless you had been at a show at Deer Creek and it was a rain-shortened show. Like they came out right at 7:30, a few songs in, they played Fool in the Rain. So I wonder if it was your first or second. I think I've seen it 3 or 4, and I would take it any time. It's a cool melding of worlds. This leads me to a question, actually, because we're talking about Houses of the Holy today. Is it Zeppelin's summer album? We know Dave is our summer tradition, right? And I don't know if I'm thinking just because the cover is bright, neon, orange, yellow, a sun rising over a mountain. I don't know if it's because the songs themselves are a little bit lighter in terms of, well, at least most of them thematically.
Yeah.
Does it feel like a summer album to you?
It feels like a nice weather car album for sure. I think this album of all of them mostly resonates with me remembering the songs driving. I mean, yeah, I would say in that case, it's probably a summer song, Windows Down, amongst all the others for sure. And would probably closely resonate with like what you would expect to see in an amphitheater or, something of the sort outdoor.
You know, it's funny because the band themselves love this album. Robert Plant especially. This is one of his favorite Zeppelin albums. We're going to get into today a lot of conversation, I think, about an album that neither for you or me probably has as much of a deep kind of hold on us as the first four do. And I think that will probably loosen up the conversation from our perspective, because I don't have a whole lot of anecdotes with this album that are super deep tie-ins. No. For some of the songs, they've been growers, but this doesn't have the same sort of deep-rooted thing of the first four albums. I thought it's actually quite a left turn from the first four that we've already discussed.
I agree 100%. For me, it's kind of weird because what I found us doing in the first four was kind of taking a block of clay, and we were having to articulate ultimately what became like the formation of Led Zeppelin, right? And it exists, but you and I were talking through how we got acclimated to the band, what our huge takeaways were as kids. That all was happening like through the vinyl presses that our dads had, and our experience with Led Zeppelin. For this album, it sort of took a turn even cosmically in that realm, because at this point I was already well into what I knew of the band, who they were, and then when I heard any one of these tracks along the way, I knew exactly who it was right away, and I wasn't like doing a deep dive into any of it at that point. I was like, oh, this is just more Zeppelin, feed me type of thing. So I agree with you. I think this is going to be just a little bit more light in terms of our interpretation. I will say, man, like one thing that I've learned on this journey that I was unaware of completely is how big of a fan of Led Zeppelin Rick Rubin is.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Holy cow. And he has just some amazing ways to articulate my thoughts. Like we are kindred spirits in the way of our Zeppelin vision, if you will, because I read things from him, and no bullshit, man, I've made notes of my own through the listening process of each album, and I go to his quotes for it, and I'm like, this fucker took my thoughts, but he articulated in such a Rick Rubin way that it just kills the way that I formulated it. But nonetheless, it's just awesome, man, because I realized that he is interpreting things in an amazing way, and the left turn that this album took, which you and I are well acclaimed to, I think it's one of our favorite things about music, is space. Like, and man, did they conquer that in this album. Like, there is so much space in certain songs that we'll get to that leave the potential for things to be derailed completely or go off the hinges, but they just did it in such a cool way that Rick Rubin said it's kind of like with a few of these songs, which we'll get to, but there's no interpretation of what genre or what it is. It's just exists as that standalone, and it's just a cool thing. And I stumbled across it because every time I've researched these and done my own deep dive, I've come across the name Rick Rubin.
You be the Rick Rubin correspondent. I'll read all the Rolling Stone review of this album, which was scathing. And it's not our old friend John Mendelsohn that did it. The review was just, I don't think the guy liked one single track. And I'll be honest, when I revisited this, I listened to it again on the way back from that Dave show in St. Louis. I don't want to say that I came into this album surly isn't the right word. The first four are sort of unassailable. They're all classics in their own way. And 3 might be my favorite of the bunch, even though I don't think it's the best, but it's my favorite. Houses of the Holy, I think in some ways could be argued, it's a downturn. But then I listened to it on the way back and I thought, wait a second. I can appreciate this album for the fact that this is a band at their peak that is playing with some looseness. And here's the key thing, Ben. They aren't taking themselves that seriously on this album. The last thing it reeks of is self-importance or pretension. If anything, they were too loose, and it was at the expense of this maybe being a 5-star 10 out of 10. But I listened to it again, and maybe it was summer, and maybe it was the drive, but I thought, I enjoy this. And for different reasons than I enjoyed the first four. And I think that's the cool thing about Zeppelin's discography. In the same way that the album covers all kind of have their different identity, the songs and the sounds within them, same thing. Houses of the Holy is not like any of the first four. And that's kind of exciting. Imagine going through this back in 1973. It gets released, and you're just thinking this is going to be a retread of Led Zeppelin 4, which people would have been fine with. And it opens with The Song Remains the Same, which there's not a single Zeppelin song on the first four that's anything close to that. That's kind of cool.
No, it's very cool. And as you go track by track, I would like to agree with you in saying that it's like gearing down or a step below, but then you take each song singularly and you're like, wow, like, I mean, there's a good chance, and we always kind of go back to this, that my wife would probably know at least one song from this album, right? It
Oh,
would
sure.
be familiar to her. So
She'd
they're
know
not,
D Maker,
yeah, they're not like B
Jamaica.
sides completely, or just like deep tracks, for the most part. But like the perspective, if you handed me this album blindly, I would have some initial trouble looking at the cover and going, this is what this album is known for. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I enjoyed my listen through. I've done it 3 times now since our break, and the first was driving back to halfway back to Evansville to drop the kids off for a weekend away a few weeks ago. So it was just me, Brooks, and Collins in the truck as I was cruising, and I decided to throw it on, and it was a cool experience, which I'll get to a story from that. But going through it track by track, again, there were some surprises, and there was also just a lot of comfortability because it's not like I don't know those songs. It's just you forget that these songs all went together on one album.
Yeah, there's a freshness to it. Yeah, when I revisited it, because I don't do it as much as the other ones, there was a freshness and kind of excitement in revisiting these songs, because if I looked at my old iPod play count from my iPod Classic back in the day, the Houses of the Holy cuts would not have gotten a whole lot of them, except for a couple. Another thing, too, that this album has, it kind of shimmers. And again, I can't tell, man, if my interpretation of the sonic parts of this album are tied into that really bright cover, or even just the name. Houses of the Holy conjures up this sort of shimmery temple, or I don't know, just something from the heavens. And meanwhile, Led Zeppelin 4 kind of has this urban, kind of decaying front cover. And to me, I always associate that album for some reason with autumn. I don't know if you're the same way or not, but that seems like an autumn album. I think the 2 summer albums, now that I think about it, Ben, Led Zeppelin 2 is a summer album. They recorded it in the summer. It's pure rock and roll. You could play it on your pontoon boat, and people would have no issue with that. And this is the other one. So I think it's kind of cool that we're doing this as our summer actually kicks off in full gear. And it added a little pep to my step, because I didn't know what angle I was going to take with this album, and I'm feeling a little more confident in discussing it, and kind of liberated myself not being so in tune with it as I was the first 4. Like we can talk about it in a way as if we're kind of new to it. Whereas the first 4, there's no way you can pretend that.
100%. Also, naturally, with what we're doing here, going through mini-series, there is a proverbial peak of the mountain, and I feel like we started at the bottom, we went album by album, we sort of crested, if you will. And this album naturally is on the downtrodden side of our journey. It's the second half. It's the second act as we're closing in on our mini-series. So just naturally, without anything to do with Zeppelin or the track listings that are on each album, this thing fell below where we were peaking on the proverbial Zeppelin mountain.
Yeah,
and
for
we're
sure.
sort of on our way back down. So I think that played into my psyche too, which was like, hey, like, we're not done yet. We got a ways to go, and some good discussion around each album. So, but in my head, I was looking at it like there's a lot of momentum. There still is momentum, but when I revisited this album, it just reminded me that this is not lacking in any capacity. So,
No. If this is a minor work in their discography compared to the others, then that's a pretty good discography. All right. Shall I do the formalities so we can get into this?
bing, bang, boop.
Welcome to Drop the Needleheads with Schmiggy, that's me, and Yahtzee, that's him. Where the records spin, the bourbon flows, and the breakdowns in this series are deeper than John Bonham's bass drum. This series, of course, is The Pod Remains the Cast, and today we're discussing Led Zeppelin's 5th album from 1973, Houses of the Holy. Now, Ben, when we were in London town, I'll tell you real quick about 2 places we visited, but Kara asked me, what's this The Pod Remains the Cast thing? Because if for people that look up our podcast on whatever feed you get it, we will have a separate cover for each series. So for our next artist, we got a cover ready to go and an alternative series title. The Pod Remains the Cast is from the opening track from Houses of the Holy. The song remains the same. The word game is this, in homage of Blank Check, our favorite movie podcast. we need to get the word pod and we need to get the word cast in one of that band's songs or album titles. Pod Remains the Cast seemed to fit the bill, and we are, as you said, at the halfway point, which is kind of crazy to believe. I'm really, by the way, excited for our next artist because that is going to perfectly align with an end of summer thing that you and I and a few of our friends are doing as well. So we got a nice little path forward here, I think.
100%. Also, not to put a quick bookmark in our intros, but we have since gone live, man. We didn't even mention that in the first couple of minutes here. We launched. We have 3 episodes that are available on your favorite podcast platform.
Well, it took a while for one of them, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, we'll get to that
at
some point. Maybe not tonight, but perhaps tonight. I don't know. We'll see how this cocktail goes down. Nonetheless, 3 episodes in that are live, and we've actually just recently gotten some reviews and some feedback, which are super fun. I've had friends and some loved ones that have reached out, and they've given me their own track listing. So I love the fact that we're conjuring folks to like visit and chart their own experience with an album. And we also got some great feedback on Reddit, of all places, from a couple gentlemen who gave the entirety of whatever podcast episode they listened to a listen, with some great feedback on sort of the length, but also their takeaways, and the fact that we gave flowers to
how many more times?
Oh man, I and you love to see it. You always get just a little gut feeling in your stomach where you're like, we're doing this, and I could care less what people think, to be honest.
We do.
We do. But at the end of the day, as long as it resonates, they're enjoying it. But to see that kind of feedback where we're conjuring up sort of a pathway of their own, and then likewise, some really thoughtful feedback on where we've placed our tracks and stuff. It's just it's really cool to see. So that tickled me.
Yeah, the biggest ones we got. How many more times someone agreed with that? Someone disagreed on Led Zeppelin 2 that we each had thank you towards the bottom. I mean, we explained that pretty thoroughly in that podcast. It's not a bad song.
No.
I think with this album, we might have a couple candidates.
Yeah, and
for filler, throwaway that actually might not be that good.
For sure. Also, just a reminder that it is going to come out in spades when we are dissecting mini-series from other bands that do have
Plunkers,
favorable songs. Yes, this is really tough. So yes, I agree. Thank you was way down on the list. We did describe it in that moment, because how is it possible that you would place that anywhere above the placing? And but again, like, for people to have that sense of feeling, we talk about our cosmic journeys and where we were and what we were doing when we heard certain songs. Perhaps this kid was sitting on Pappy's lap listening to Thank You, and that song has resonated with him for life. And if that's the case, cool. Nothing against it, man. That's what it's all about. So that's why we're doing this. And if anything, we sparked the moment for him to be like, no, man, like, it's definitely Thank You. Thank You's got to be up there, which, I mean, that's the point of this podcast. It's, take it at your own stride, but agree to disagree and give us some feedback on what your favorites are. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, I will quickly, before we get to the background of this album, 2 sites that I saw in London when we were there. We were in London for 4 days before we went to Budapest, then London on the way out before we came home. 2 Led Zeppelin-related sites. The first one is 19 Gerrard Street. Now, this is in the Soho area of London in the Chinatown neighborhood, and it's right next to a nail spa. It's a very nondescript building, but there's a doorway, and on the bottom is a tiled 19 Gerrard Street sign. And according to the Becoming Led Zeppelin documentary, there was some investigative reporting into this. That is the site of Led Zeppelin's first rehearsal. So I had to get a picture in front of that door. Nothing too crazy or anything. You wouldn't look at it and think anything of it. But for a long time, 39 Gerrard Street was the address. They clarified it 19 Gerrard Street. So that was one. So, and by the way, Ben, I watched Becoming Led Zeppelin again on the way back on American Airlines. Kudos to them for having that available.
Yeah, Netflix too. Fully available on Netflix now, which is awesome. So get it where you watch it, but I think it'll help with visualizing this podcast that we're doing here for the listeners. So
that documentary is comfort food to me. It makes me just feel really warm.
I love anything that you can just toss on, and whether you are planning on napping through it or watching it intently, you can do both.
Yeah.
Perfectly. It is a little difficult to nap to only because of the sheer volume and mix of what's happening. There are quiet moments and then there are very abrupt moments, but man, it hits home. It's a very well done documentary. So,
And the other one, which is at the tail end of that documentary, they play What Is and What Should Never Be. And by the way, there was someone that gave some love on Reddit about that. They're like, finally, What Is and What Should Never Be got its flowers from you, was Royal Albert Hall. And that's where that performance was recorded. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. It was constructed back from 1867 to 1871 by Queen Victoria in honor of Prince Albert, or King Albert, who was they have some term for it, the king consort, I think. He died young of illness, and in his honor, she built this amazing venue, was able to tour it inside, was able to sit in King Charles' suite. And it's not like it's Led Zeppelin's venue. You name the rock band, they played there. But it was cool to see the venue where they had their first really big London show. And it was kind of a homecoming parade of sorts where after Led Zeppelin 2 was a massive success, they played there in January of 1970, including that performance of What Is and What Should Never Be. And it's on that Led Zeppelin DVD that we so often watched when we lived back at Blue Balks in '06. Great show.
I need to visit that too. I've got a copy of it. I just haven't watched it in ages. So is it still pretty much original?
Yeah. I mean, the difference is, I think around 20, 30 years ago, there was a sound engineer that added these acoustic tiles to the ceiling. So you can't quite see the original dome, but as our tour guide said, before these were installed, and this would have been when Zeppelin played, it would have just been the dome. There was so much echo in that place that the joke was if you bought a ticket to one event, you essentially heard it twice. So
Damn.
you got like half price. The joke being when you saw Zeppelin or any other rock band or even an orchestra, the reverb, the slapback echo was so severe that you would hear each note twice. And it was actually pretty terribly acoustic setup. But no, they added that. Everything else, I'm sure they painted it. I'm sure they refurbished it. But it was stunning. And it was really cool to see just the amount of like care they put into architecture, how ornate everything was, and yet you name the rock band. I mean, I have an Iggy Pop, the one he did with Josh Homme and the Queens guys. I have a DVD of him playing at Royal Albert Hall. So it's a rock venue now as much as it is anything else.
Do they have like a hallway of fame where
Yes.
they're signed by everyone who's walked through those doors and played?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, it is pretty cool. So those were the two spots that I saw. And the funny thing about, we walked by Jimi Hendrix's old apartment. So there's other things that there are walking rock and roll tours in London. But sadly, a lot of the venues are no longer there. A lot of the studios are no longer there. So you kind of have to look at a street corner and say, this is where it used to be. But with Royal Albert Hall, that's the OG. All right.
Hendrix's apartment. Wow.
Yeah.
Man. I wonder, is anybody dwelling there, or is it just like a?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, the thing is, how long he lived there, I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things where he used to live here, or you go down to Brixton, which we did not do, but it's like, here's where the Clash shot their first album cover, behind this market on a stairway. So I mean, there's things like that, but there's no CBGBs, which that's not in New York anymore either. So this is kind of a universal thing. All these old haunts where. I'll give you another one. The Rolling Stones played their first ever gig at the Flamingo in Soho. And I thought, well, that'd be great. So I Googled it. Okay, where's the Flamingo? Oh, it's a pub called O'Reilly's. We went into O'Reilly's, and it was nice enough. And it had little plaques saying the Rolling Stones and other artists played here, but that was it. There was no like shrine or anything. But it's like that was their first gig.
You know me as a extreme movie buff. Like if there's a filming location that would resonate with any of my favorite films, I am all about making sure that I get off the beaten track and go check it out. And that would have been one for me where I wouldn't even say that would be like lackluster, like I would, walking in there, you still would get the charm. I mean, like something like Sun Studios, like I love playing that game with like, you kind of imagine it as you would think, and if it were just the same and it was just preserved, that sort of annoys me more than it being something that now is taking its own life in a different direction. Because you stand in a place where somebody takes deep care in making sure it doesn't change, that means it's like too perfect, untouched. Nobody's living on it. Nobody's doing anything with it. And it certainly wasn't that when the band stepped through those doors for the first time at all. They didn't know it was going to be some historic location or filming location that would end up resonating with, millions. So
I'll give you the perfect balance between that then before we move on to this album. So we did go to Liverpool for one day. I don't know if it was the flu or a quick cold fever thing, but I did come down with something on the train to Liverpool. I'm like, shit, man, out of all the days, not the day I'm going to the Cavern Club, not the day I'm going to the Beatles' home, but I think that damp London weather finally got to me. So we're on the train, we're going up there, has some hotel issues. I'm just not in a good state of mind. But we get to the Cavern Club with our suitcases. You go 4 flights down. It's a spiral staircase. And you walk in, and it is the Cavern Club, right? I mean, your eyes are saying, this is it. Come to find out, the Cavern Club is a reconstruction on the grounds of the Cavern Club, because in 1971, Liverpool filled in this entire underground bar. They filled it in, the entire thing, and they were going to do some metro stop or something with their underground train. They didn't. Eventually, they dug it all out. They excavated it. And what they had to do was reconstruct this. It's an exact replica of the original Cavern Club in the original Cavern Club space with all the Cavern Club bricks. The stage is not quite in the same location, but it's the exact same dimensions, all of that shit. So on one hand, one could be cynical, and they could say, well, that's not the original Cavern Club. But on the other hand, there was something about, okay, this spot, despite literally being filled in with concrete or God knows what, they thought enough of it to say, whoa, we screwed up. We need to bring back the Cavern Club. And that's what they did.
Especially just to be able to experience it now when so many generations while it was filled in probably didn't get a chance to. Pretty amazing in and of itself. You're like standing there, you're like, how is this even possible at this point? If that's the case, So awesome, dude. We talked about it a little bit when I arrived to St. Louis, but we were on kind of a mission. I'm just so jealous of those type of experiences, because literally from the moment that you wake up, maybe through sleep, and then as you're going to bed, everything is an experience. Whether it's like take a step off a curb off an office street, or you're walking into a place like that. I mean, it just has to be sensory overload to the max, because you don't want to blink. You don't want to like miss anything, right? And I don't know how many things exist really like here now that we spend that much thoughtful time doing. I like remember my first trip to New York as an adult, like a year plus ago. And I did the same thing. I was like, I've been here as a kid. I was directed on where to go and what to do. And it was mind blowing, but I wasn't thinking this is the New York City that now I know as an adult, and there's so much lore behind it. So like, I just remember how exhausted I was every single night, because I was like eyes wide open, experiencing as much as humanly possible, taking in the food, taking in the drinks, taking in the atmosphere, talking to locals, and just like being in the mix. That I can only imagine doing that times 1,000 as you're across the pond, just trying to, create this memory with your wife, but also like your own personal memories of each single moment. It's just insane and super jealous. So
yeah, it was fantastic. It's the lived in moments. It's just walking down the street, or it's stopping in a Liverpool pub and chatting with the bartender a little bit. It's those lived in moments. And the key with any of those is you probably experienced in New York. The hotel is for sleeping. When that day starts and you leave the hotel, it's like, I'll see you at 10 o'clock, room 402, because I got shit to do. I am here. I got it. I got to live it,
Let me ask you one thing, and then we'll move on here to the album. It's just too fun to kind of But so you guys arrive, and I know both you and Kara extremely well in terms of your planning and how much you do love planning. It's not just planning for the sake of planning. It's an exercise that you personally enjoy in downtime, which I respect. I was curious, though, in terms of just spending some afternoons or days, did you guys just kind of say, hey, we're gonna end up where we're gonna end up today? And if so, like, what were some of the, I guess, what was the top place that you guys stumbled into and you were like, man, what just a cool experience that was?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the destinations might have been planned, or the neighborhood, we're going to be in this area in the afternoon. But when you're there, just kind of walk around. Should we go left here? Let's go left here. You want to hit a coffee shop? Yeah, let's look up and see maybe a coffee shop nearby. So a couple lived-in things. I'd say for London, there was a pub called the Lord Clyde, and it was by the Modern Art Museum. And you walk in, and there was this younger chap. He was probably like a 19-year-old bartender, super polite and everything. This pub literally carpeted floors. When I asked for a whiskey, he was like, "Oh dear." Where I said, like, I saw that you guys had Bullet bourbon, and I don't know the last time they poured it. That bottle had probably been there forever. Because what do they get? They get Guinness, or they get Amstel, or whatever. London Pride, which is like a really shitty beer. But it was just kind of listening to, there was a group of like 4 or 5 older chaps that were having their pints and just thick accents. And I don't know why the carpet, I can't get over that, dude, because that's a pub thing. What bar do you go into in America that has carpeted floors?
Yeah. And the thing about it too, the idea that at any given moment, and I guess you could probably find this in the States too, but it's just problematic. There isn't a place in town where there is. Like I have local watering holes here in Louisville where you can pretty much go to any of your favorite bars at any given time. There's people eating lunch, having business meetings in their blazers or their, zips, like sales bros doing their thing. And there's probably a Coors Light being poured, right? There's a margarita that somebody has at the bar, depending upon if they're a nurse or if they're just having a day off. But in London or Liverpool, it just seems like there are breaks in the day where a pint isn't even like questioned in any capacity. It's like you're sitting down for a quick ice water. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know what it is about that thought process, but I just am obsessed with it because I'm like, man, just to, quickly, like you guys are between work and home or work and your second job or whatever. It's like, I'm going to pop in, and it's not even like mid-afternoon at this point. I'm running home for lunch real quick. I'm also going to stop through, grab a quick pint of Amstel, and then keep on chugging. It's like, man, that's just it's so Mad Men-ish, but it almost seems frozen in time too, with just what you think about when you hear London or think about being across the pond. So
yeah, that was a pinch me moment where we're just sitting there having a drink. It's like, okay, this is kind of what I envisioned. A lived-in bar that had been there since like the 1890s or something. So, yeah, it was that. It was getting a Sunday roast in Liverpool and seeing like Liverpudlian families, like grandparents, parents, and kids, and the universality of it too, if that's a word, universality. Where you would see the kids and they'd be on their iPads because the parents just want some peace and quiet. So even in a different culture across the pond, it's like, I need little Timmy to just be quiet so I can have a nice, relaxing Sunday roast. Fine, here's your iPad. Kids were great, but it kind of cracked me up that it's the same thing you'd see it at TGI Fridays in America, just much more, I don't know, character. I like TGI Fridays for a cheap eat, but like it just had a lot of character, and yet it felt familiar in some ways.
For sure. I love it. And it always bodes the question of what the thoughts are coming back across this way for, folks from over there and how they feel about being in the States, polarizing factor of being in a place like Chicago or Los Angeles or New York or Texas for that matter, could just be like you're in a different world, but there also are reminders of home, and like it's not that different. No. It's a society that might sound a little bit different or look a little bit different or have different mannerisms and ways of life. But at the end of the day, it's still 2025 and we're all still living in it. So it's kind of one of those things where, especially that area, just had to be so cool, man. But again, it reeks of history. That's the cool part about it is here, Louisville, very historic city, Champaign even, awesome. You can see some pretty cool places. But like when you're there, the amount of sensory overload and then also places that resonate with so much lore that we love, I would probably get to a point if I were on a tour like you were where I would probably just let out like a laugh and I would say, no disrespect to this laugh. There is just so much that went on here. Like it's almost comical how much went on here, It's endless, but just awesome, dude. That's so cool. I'm so glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah, we'll go every couple of years, not to London, but we'll do a Europe trip. Budapest, that's a whole other thing, man. That place was incredible. I cannot recommend Budapest enough. All right, shall we?
Shall.
Okay, so how is this the Holy? This is Led Zeppelin's 5th album. At this point, they're basically the biggest band in the world. This is the background we'll get into here with some recording, production. You got some stuff about the album art as well. But yeah, they're the biggest band in the world. Yes, the Stones are the Stones, and Exile on Main Street in 1972 was a very big record for them. But for Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin 4 had really solidified them as the premier rock band in the world. So how do you follow that up? Well, they go on tour in Australia in the early spring of 1972. And after that, they say, hey, let's go find a location. They had success with Headley Grange for Led Zeppelin 4, and they had success with Bron-Y-Aur and Led Zeppelin 3. They wanted maybe a less creaky and damp location. So speaking of the Stones, they go to Stargroves. This is Mick Jagger's mansion and country estate in Hampshire. So they congregate there in April 1972. There are only 2 songs, Ben. Do you know which 2 songs were prepared coming into this session?
I don't, but I could take a guess.
Okay.
That's fair.
One from Jonesy.
I'm going to go with No Quarter
Correct?
and The Rain Song.
That is correct. That's Jimmy's song. So I thought that the song remains the same because it's so complicated. Might have been as well, but it sounds like a lot of that was done here. But No Quarter had actually been tried for Led Zeppelin 4. They worked in the arrangement. They worked in the tempo. Jimmy had the Rain song individually. He brought that to the band. But everything else was basically hashed out through jamming. So this was a very fruitful session for the band, one that they all look back on pretty fondly. And the only goal that they had when they went to Stargroves was just write and record some songs, not essentially the whole album, which is basically what they did. Here's a quote from Jimmy. He said, when we first went down there, we had no set ideas. Not entirely true, but mostly true. He continues, we just recorded the ideas each one of us had at that particular time. It was simply a matter of getting together and letting it come out. Eddie Kramer, from Jimi Hendrix fame, and he had worked with Zeppelin before, he handled engineering duties, and they used the old Rolling Stones mobile studio again in order to be able to record whenever they wanted to. So, at these Stargrove sessions, 6 of the tracks emerged. Ben, you've already named the Rain song, No Quarter. Do you think that was recorded at Stargroves or elsewhere?
I'm going to go with my gut and say elsewhere.
Correct. And here's why. If you listen to it, it's a very dry, studio-sounding song. You listen to songs like The Song Remains the Same, Rain Song, Over the Hills and Far Away, Dancing Days, Mak'er, and The Ocean. Those 6 all recorded at Stargroves. That leaves one other song we haven't mentioned, Ben, that was not recorded at Stargroves. Which Houses of the Holy track did I not mention that I'm sure we'll talk about? Maybe negatively. Maybe.
Crunge?
Do you like, well, we could say, I was just going to ask you point blank, do you like the Crunge?
I got to say this, man. The Crunge, and this is no spoiler whatsoever, is in fact in itself a spicy biscuit.
Okay.
It is. And I mean that in the most literal form. It's a chunky, groove-ridden song. But I will save my criticisms and accolades for later because I don't want to give too much away on my thoughts on it. I will say, though, interestingly enough, going through what you're describing here resonates wholeheartedly because as you listen to the album, even with being able to say the Rain song and No Quarter were recorded elsewhere, like, I mean, I guess maybe our listening palette at this point, 5 albums in, is a little different, but like they sort of stick out like a sore thumb in terms of the sonic takeaway of what they are. Both literally the way the song is formulated, written, and their space, but then essentially from the album, all the other songs have a certain essence to them in similarity that those two don't. So I'm kind of shocked that like those are actually the two because it just now makes perfect sense. So,
but this album does have an energy to it that I think Stargroves captured. There is a fun, happy quality to this album. Led Zeppelin 4, they were there to do a job, and they did it expertly. I mean, I use the word intentional masterpiece for Led Zeppelin 4. They came in with no designs on that for Houses of the Holy, and I think that looseness comes through, and I think apparently Mick Jagger's estate at Stargroves was a great location for it. So They did record some other songs, which we will be getting to later in the series. Black Country Woman, Physical Graffiti. The Rover, also on Physical Graffiti. Walter's Walk, which isn't heard until Coda, and that was something that they jammed on in Days of Confused in those 30-minute mammoth jam sessions. And yes, the self-titled, no, not self-titled, the titular track, Houses of the Holy. Not on Houses of the Holy, though worthy of it. I think we would agree that song would be worthy to be on this album.
For sure. And I appreciate it both not being on it for whatever reason. No title track, but interesting nonetheless that they maintained it and kept the same name.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and the fact that when I listened to it, Physical Graffiti was later in my Zeppelin journey. Houses of the Holy was before that, and I always thought it was puzzling. Well, why did they wait? And then I listened to Houses of the Holy, the track, and thought, no, seriously, why did they wait? Because to me, it sounds like a hit. I mean, because the riff is so easy. But regardless, they already had other basically riff rock songs in this album. They shelved it. Additional work was done at Olympic Studios in May, so Stargroves in April 72, Olympic Studios in May, and then Electric Lady Studios in New York during the band's 1972 American tour. And it was this tour that some shows they recorded in California were eventually released on How the West Was Won, which is a great live set, and that includes some then unreleased cuts, Over the Hills and Far Away, Dancing Days, and The Ocean. And the band already in 1972 was playing those songs with a lot of confidence, and they're highlights on that live album. They're very, very good. So that is the background, Ben, to the recording and production of this album. It came together very organically for them, and I think that comes through in the album itself. Now, one thing that delayed this album, though, was the cover art. They couldn't get the thing right. So do you have some intel on this, I guess what would now be controversial, even though it probably shouldn't be, album cover to Houses of the Holy?
I do. Pretty interesting, actually. Number one, I guess, the fact that when you take a glimpse of the album cover, it is a photograph, but looks like a painting, right? So it was kind of cool to do a deep dive on this. The cover art for Houses of the Holy was inspired by Arthur C. Clarke's novel Childhood's End. So the cover is a collage of several photographs which were taken at the Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland by Aubrey Powell, and
Hypnosis. Couple things, Ben, real quick. Arthur C. Clarke, also the author of 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Oh, shit, no.
Yes, sir.
Insane.
And Hypnosis is, if there is a preeminent album cover design firm, is it Strom or Storm Thurgeson and Hypnosis. And then Aubrey Powell, as you said, led this effort. But Hypnosis became like the premier 70s rock and roll cover thing, most famously Dark Side of the Moon.
Insane.
Yep.
And the fact that this place actually exists is insane. Because, I mean, to go visit Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland would be pretty freaking sweet at this point, knowing that was the cover art. But it featured two naked child models, Stefan and Samantha Gates. It was a frustrating affair over the course of 10 days. Shooting was done first thing in the morning and at sunset in order to capture the light at dawn and dusk, but the desired effect was never achieved due to constant rain and clouds. The photos of the two children were taken in black and white and were multi-printed to create the effect of 11 individuals that can be seen on the album cover. The results were unsatisfactory, but some accidental tinting effects in post-production created a suitable cover. The inner gatefold photograph was taken at Dunluchy Castle, nearby the Causeway. In February 2010, Stefan Gates was featured on a BBC Radio 4 documentary about the cover. He said there was something sinister about the image, though his sister disagreed. He also admitted never having heard the album. The program ended with Gates returning to Giant's Causeway and listening to the album on a portable player, after which he said that a great weight had been lifted from him. Samantha also appeared on the back cover of the band's 1976 album, Presence. So, man, that's, it's always cool. And I obviously read that in preparation for this before, but I guess after a recent listen, it's just like sort of reminiscent to the baby that's on Nevermind.
Yeah.
It's like, uh, uh, poor Stefan had no choice in the matter, I guess, at this point. Like they'd chosen him and his sister, and then he's thinking, I've been put in this world of lore for the rest of the time, and he chose not to listen to the album until much, much later. So how cool is
His
that?
Tookus is there in perpetuity. And here's the thing. I think it is a striking album cover. It's not my favorite Zeppelin album. And it's not my favorite Zeppelin album cover. I'm going to always give that to 3, and it's Psychedelic Wheel. I just have the nostalgia for it. I think it's a fantastic looking cover. It pops. I could understand going into a record store and just not even being a Zeppelin fan, and that it's striking. It's very striking. So their first work with Hypnosis, it was all printing errors. They couldn't get the colors they wanted, and then when it was finally like a happy accident, so to speak, and you have this sort of fluorescent orange, it looks great. And the Inner Gatefold cover too, which is that place that you mentioned, a castle somewhere, it is another striking image, and they did a very different color gradient for that. But yeah, one of their better album covers for a band that was known for really focusing on that.
Yeah, and it provoked to me, like just looking at it without any background on the fact at all. I thought it was somewhat of a play on like Stairway to Heaven because there's no like real description that the stairway is a physical stairway as we would think of it, like perfect cuts and everything. But this is like stones perfectly laden leading somewhere. And man, the happy accident, as you referred to it, like a Bob Ross painting, definitely seems to be perfect because it sort of seems like it just goes on forever. Like, where is it heading and where are these children going? So that's insane. But, one other takeaway here is you were describing the track listing and how Houses of the Holy ended up landing on Physical Graffiti and not Houses of the Holy itself. I thought to myself that would be, in essence, Dave putting Stand Up on Big Whiskey and the Gru Klux King, and we'd be like, why? Why did this album not go? Why did this song not go on Stand Up? However, parallels of the two are just so far away. So, but I was like, I mean, what thought process was there where they finally just decided to kick the can on that one and landed on Physical Graffiti? But it works. I mean,
it does. And we were going to have a discussion when we get to one of these tracks about if Houses of the Holy, the track, would have been a better fit on this album. But we'll get there. Shall we launch into the tracks themselves?
Go.
Okay. Houses of the Holy begins with a song that had many titles at first with Jimmy Page. The Campaign, The Overture, very epic titles. I'll say as far as just titles are concerned, the song remains the same. That's a great title for a song. It's a great title for an opener. And this is something that Jimmy really constructed first with himself and then Robert laid the vocals on, even though it was not intended to have any vocals at all to begin with. It was going to be an instrumental opener directly into the Rain song. So the song remains the same, Ben. Before I get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of it, want to get some initial thoughts. I mean, to me, this is a very immediate sign that this is going to be a very different album than what we'd seen before, because it's not anything like Good Times, Bad Times, Whole Lotta Love, Immigrant Song, or Black Dog. This is not a riff rocker. This is a shimmering kind of prog rock opus. And I guess I just want your initial takeaways, because we'll do Spicy Biscuits and all that later, but as an opener, do you think it's effective?
Yeah, I do when you get into the meat of the album. I think it makes sense. I think the way that they placed the song and tracks on this album, both side A and side B, work cohesively. But I always talk about, the forethought of being, in my parents' house, sitting on the floor in my bedroom, spinning this album now as my fifth Zeppelin experience. And the song remains the same, is track one, and I'm giving it a listen. I love the name. I love it now, though. And it's so synonymous with Zeppelin that when you take each, like, you're an English teacher, so you do this, I'm sure, with your kids. But it's like, guys, break down each word. Like, the song remains the same. What are they trying to tell us? This has been so historic now with Led Zeppelin that the song remains the same is like its own thing. It could be trademarked at this point because it's just what it is. It's, and I would think, like, if I saw it for the first time and I was thinking, the hell are they doing? Like, this, is this supposed to mean that this is like the same as something else? Is it the same over and over again in terms of the melody, what's going like I would be digging into it probably too deep than what it is. Now I just look at it and I'm like, Led Zeppelin, the song remains the same. It could be a great book title, movie, documentary,
As it was.
wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Right. So there's a million things that go through my head here. In terms of sonic takeaways from the song itself, I think it sort of lands again because where the album leads you versus where the others did, I think that they went at this, as you said earlier, in more of a loose and playful manner, without taking themselves too seriously. Like, I think at this point they knew, and I'm not saying that the song remains the same isn't grabbing, but they didn't have to like capture us. They already had us. So, or had their audience at that point. It was their time to name an album. It was their time to, get a little bit more out there with the album cover and not be forgiving in any respect and start the album with a track that probably would have landed somewhere in the realm of like track 5 or 6 on any of the first 3 albums. So
If you think about it, we listened to Blank Check, the movie podcast, and their whole concept is when a director releases a movie that's so successful that it essentially gives them a blank check for everything that they do after that. So after Led Zeppelin 4, Zeppelin has their blank check. Think about it. The first 4 albums, each of them, they're trying to prove something. They don't need to prove anything anymore. So that looseness, I think, kind of informs this track where on one hand, you could look at the title and think this is Zeppelin's stab at writing their next masterpiece. But Jimmy Page never talked about it like that. He just wanted guitars, a lot of them. He viewed it as an overture, and that's exactly what it is. It fits the bill as an album opener, and I think for what's to come, it kind of embodies a lot of that looseness. There's a quote that he has about the construction of this song. It says, quote, it was originally going to be an instrumental, an overture that led into the Rain song, but I guess Robert had different ideas. Quote, this is pretty good, better get some lyrics. Quick. And then Jimmy laughed. He continues, I had all the beginning material together, and Robert suggested that we break down into halftime in the middle. After we figured out we were going to break it down, the song came together in a day. I always had a cassette recorder around. That's how both The Song Remains the Same and Stairway came together, from bits of taped ideas. I'll say this, Ben. The song needs that breather of a verse. I know it kind of grounds to a halt with I had a dream, crazy dream, with the halftime. But this could not have sustained itself for 5 minutes of just all out. So I like Robert's idea. I think it worked really well.
yeah, no, and it resonates. It's definitely stood the test of time for sure, and sort of as its standalone self. But it kicks the album off, and again, I think it lets them set the tone for ultimately what the rest of the album will sort of look like. But man, just like in pure Zeppelin form, you really don't truly know what's next until the next track starts. So
I will say this is an incredibly fun song to drum. When I just pop on the noise canceling headphones and I want to just drum for fun, this is one of the Zeppelin songs I go back to, even though I would never claim it's a top 10 Zeppelin song for me. I got to ask you, Plant's vocals, they're sped up, which is why they have that sort of alien quality to it almost. Yay or nay? I mean, do you like the experiment, or do you wish you had a cut of this song with him in his normal timbre?
I fully wish I had a cut of the song with him in normal capacity for just selfish reasons, because I would love to compare the two. I don't know, man. I think that's a tough question to answer because it is exactly what it is, and it's all I've ever really known of the song. You do get essences of something different is happening here, but I wouldn't, I guess, in relativity, say that I wish they would have done it in quote unquote normal fare. There was probably a reason behind it, even if it was just experimental. And I mean, it works. The hustle and bustle of the song and the way that it's sort of compacted in different ways. I'll say that like it makes sense reading back now that it was supposed to be instrumental. How many times did we have certain songs in our catalog, Mike, where, I mean, it was like hell to put lyrics over something like The Real One or something like that in the beginning. Kenton figured out a way to do it. Shout out Kenton. But like in the same respect, there may have been something here to be like, guys, I'm trying my best. But if you want me to sing over this thing, like let me do it. If not, it's going to be instrumental. And finally, they probably made a deal with the devil to say, these lyrics will work, these melodies work. We got to speed this shit up because there's really no way for this to lay over the top of this track without just being a sore thumb.
In that regard, it does feel like the lyrics are kind of slapped on. And Robert had an idea. He executed it. He was a professional by this point, but it doesn't feel, while it was a Page Plant composition, it doesn't feel as collaborative as other things the two of them did. It feels very much Jimmy had the whole thing. All right, Robert, slap some lyrics on top of it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you ruining this song for me for the rest of the time. So.
What you were fine until you found out the vocals were sped up?
Oh, no, I think I've actually, funnily enough, placed this right where it needs to be in my rankings. But nonetheless, now I will for sure. This is one of those yellow car moments where I'm always now going to notice the sped up lyrics, number one, which I didn't necessarily before. Not that much anyway. And I think I'll look at this song maybe a different way the next listen through. So.
Has the squeaky bass drum on Since I've Been Loving You affected you at all yet?
Can't say that I've actually revisited that song yet with all that we've been doing in life, but I'll say no to that.
That's good. Because, and I will say this, that song's too good to be ruined. This one, I don't know if I can say the same. But well, this is going to be a very interesting Spicy Biscuit category. All right, let's move on to track number 2 here. This is The Rain Song. This is a Jimmy Page composition first and foremost, but unlike the song remains the same, I think that Robert's contributions are essential to the song. And they seem to fit like a glove in a way that the song remains the same, as vocals do not. I'll get into some nitty-gritty here in a bit with it, but the Rain Song is maybe been the only, along with No Quarter, their attempts at something poignant or long-last. Like, I don't think they were trying for a masterpiece on this album like previous albums necessarily, but I do think the Rain Song was purposefully, here's a composition. Now, how effective do you think it is, you looking at it through that lens?
It's always been a ballad to me for sure. It's impossible not to get swept up by this song like a warm blanket. I mean, it's the name. I guess we'll start there, man. The Rain Song.
Great name.
The ocean. There's so many on this album where it's like, oh, like, give me more. Like, what's that going to be like? You know, they're already giving you an experience before the experience. And I don't know, there's certain lyrics in this song too that I love, but it's mostly the fact that when you go into it, some people have a massive dislike with rain. Some have, they could care less if it's raining or not. Others have an obsession with it. So me personally, like, I love a good rainy day. I love to be out in the rain, oddly enough, obviously dependent upon the situation. But yeah, going into this, man, and every time I visit it, I think the first probably 15 to 20 seconds of the song, I'm like so close to pressing next. And then I sort of bring my finger back, and next thing I know, I'm nearing the end and I don't want it to stop. And it's an incredible takeaway from this song because I'm like, what is it? What is it about each moment that is different from the last? It's almost like Zeppelin's catalog to date in like one compacted song, which would bode to a ballad because it's like a journey, man. It's not a journey like Stairway. It's not a journey like, almost any song that they've had up to this point. And so I think that, again, when you start it, you're like, I've heard this before, and you're just about to press next, or I am anyway, that I'm visited with something that keeps me there and keeps me going with it. I will say, too, just for a small anecdote, I mentioned earlier that I was driving the kids back, for the listeners, Evansville is about 2 hours away from Louisville. So for all you parents out there, it's easy to do a halfway drop, both if you have a fur kid or a physical human child, as opposed to going all the way and then all the way back for a lovely weekend with your wife at home or whatever the case may be. So we'll do that in most cases. And I was driving my kids back. They have been getting a kick out of hearing Dad on the pod if we drive, so on and so forth. So I kind of teed it up and said, Dad's got some homework to do. There's nothing better than listening to a good album in the car. and I didn't do too much because if I do, my daughter Collins will tell me no straight up, like she wants to listen to Moana or Moana 2
It could be worse, I
or
guess.
Paw Patrol, any of the above, but not Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy for sure. So I put it on just subtly and started playing it, and the Rain song was playing, and I shit you not, man, we're coming up over this hill in Hoosier National Forest, gorgeous drive, and I see a rain cloud ahead, and it starts to rain, and Collins is like, "Is it raining, Dada?" And I was like, "It kind of is raining off and on, and it would pour and then it would stop, and then it would pour and then it would stop." And this song was playing, and it was just one of those moments as a dad where you're like, "You guys have really no idea how crazy this moment is for so many reasons." Definitely more powerful in that moment than it even is now looking back, but just something so cool that like my almost 4-year-old was like, "Is it raining, Dada?" as the Rain song is playing and it's physically raining and hitting the truck. It was just pretty cool. But again, man, I do have a fondness to this song, and initially and even throughout, it's like I don't know, man. It's like you're super thirsty and you're going through the gambit of drinks that you think are going to quench your thirst. And although you have successfully quenched your thirst by the end of the song, you're still thirsty. Does that make any sense?
No,
Like
it does. I think that this
it
song,
never totally solidifies to like what it is. I think it seems like it's constantly building to something, doesn't quite get there, but then when it's done, when it's said and done, you're sort of like, that was enough, and I enjoyed it fully. I don't know. I just always keep revisiting the song. So
it doesn't have the dynamicism of Stairway to Heaven. Well, there is a climax in the song, like John Bonham breaks in.
yeah.
But they still, when he's done drumming, or when he's done drumming hard, there's still a minute and a half left. So this is a very leisurely pace, and it's not hurrying to get anywhere. And I can see both criticisms and compliments as far as it's just sort of, take its time. I mean, to me, this is a song that didn't resonate when I was younger. And I think that as I listened to it on the way back from St. Louis, I know this song left, right, up, sideways, down, all that. And yet, I got to be in a certain mindset to really appreciate it. Yet, I think just from an objective, like musical viewpoint, I appreciate how complex a lot of the arrangement is. I appreciate the fact that they very knowingly are like, dude, we're just going to like really take our time with this. And also that they let John Paul Jones essentially add all the color to this song, because the guitars themselves, they sound great. Robert, a very good vocal performance, pretty good lyrics as well. But it's really John Paul Jones and the mellotron and the piano that makes it kick up a notch from what it would be otherwise. So I'm waffling with this song. I always have been.
Yeah, I also, number one, dude, I'm glad I was off mic there because I was laughing pretty hysterically.
Yeah, what's so goddamn funny?
In just pure like English lore and the towns that they named, dude,
What
like
was it? He wrote it in Plumpton.
Composed in Jimmy's home in Plumpton. It's
Yes,
like,
I know. It's ridiculous.
I just want to see what Plumpton looks like. I'm so intrigued. Like, name a place that's like, I don't say I'm from Champaign and somebody is like, man, I want to go there, but like, I want to see what Plumpton's all about.
It's ridiculous. So, the names are amazing over there.
I will lastly add this to the song, and we can kind of move on because Mike, I think this is definitely a pod where we are going to need to get to our rankings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think we're gonna let too much out. So I'm gonna try to keep things close to the hip in terms of my descriptions on and feelings on these songs. But sure. Rick Rubin has said of the Rain song, "I don't even know what kind of music this is. It defies classification. There's such tasteful, beautiful detail in the guitar and a triumphant feel when the drums come in. It's sad and moody and strong all at the same time. I could listen to this song all day. That would be a good day."
Nice.
So I read that, and that was after I sort of gave my thoughts that I just gave you and our listeners. And I was like, God damn you, Rick. Like, that's perfectly put, and exactly how I feel about this song is like, I want to turn it off right away, or at least press next, because I feel inherently like I've heard it 1,000 times, and I'm just like, And then I don't, and I'm glad I didn't. And then I almost want to re-listen to it over again. So I think he just perfectly kind of encapsulates the song itself. And again, like, just crazy that Rick is such a a huge Zeppelin fan top to bottom. So
Yeah, there is an enigmatic quality to it because even I myself, I can't really classify the song or say, you know what this reminds me of is this. After all these years, and yet it's never been one of my favorite Zeppelin songs, but I think that's quite the compliment you could give any song is, well, I don't know, it doesn't really sound like anything I've heard before. One more quote I want to give you here. So this is from Jimmy. He has an anecdote about why he wrote the Rain song in Plumpton, at his house in Plumpton. So George Harrison was hanging out with John Bonham one night and told Bonham, the problem with you guys is that you never do ballads. Jimmy said, I'll give him a ballad, so I wrote Rain Song, which appears on Houses of the Holy. In fact, you'll notice I even quote something in the song's first two chords. I'm trying to think. Da-da-da-doom. Da-da-da-doom. Da-da-da-da-da. I guess, I don't know. Is it a direct nod to something? Perhaps, but.
could be.
Okay, so that's the Rain Song. Shall we move on to track 3?
Plumpton, man. Just
Fucking
it
Plumpton.
reminds me so much of like Doug Funny's hometown Bluffington, where they moved from Bloatsburg. It's like,
God. Could we ever do an episode for the Beats? Are there enough Beats tracks to necessitate a Drop the Needleheads episode? That's the
I know there's
question.
enough stories for sure from
damn.
you and I for that one, so we might be able to swing that. But
All right, track 3. Would we go so far as to say that this is a certifiable classic? Over the Hills and Far Away. Now, we don't want to be too obvious with spicy biscuit awards, but I think, is it fair to say, Ben, if there is a quintessential Zeppelin track on Houses of the Holy,
yes,
this is it?
yes, 100 times. There's definitely going to be an essence of like a greatest hits, and you know, in pure greatest hits form, you typically need to mirror the track listing numbers that usually exist. So like we're talking like 8, 9 tracks max that you would be able to put on like your own personal greatest hits. And I have a feeling most times, if you were fair anyway, that this would have to go on there. And I'm not saying that from my personal takeaways of this song, but it is the Led Zeppelin, and it's one that you would put on a quick mixtape for your high school girlfriend and say, you want to get chops about who Led Zeppelin is and what they do, like this is on that album, right? This is on that cassette tape. So
I mentioned in a previous episode that the first time I heard this, because Houses of the Holy was like the 5th or 6th Zeppelin album I bought, and my order was kind of ramshackle, but this I heard on VH1 Legends. And that was like a, not quite behind the music, but it was behind the music without all the scandal and stuff. So there was a Beatles Legends, there was a Doors Legends, Creedence.
Here's a trivia question for you in the Champaign-Urbana area. What channel number was VH1?
Easy. 51.
Nope, 52. CMT was 51.
Ah, okay, so MTV was 53.
And BET was 54.
Can you give me a few more channels just to see if I can remember these?
Disney.
61?
67. 61 was Oxygen. ESPN's.
Well, 25.
20, 24, 25.
Right.
20. Comedy Central.
Well, 26 was like Sports Channel out of Chicago, and then it was Comcast Sports Network, and then 27 was Comedy Central.
Absolutely. USA was 28.
Scrambled Porn.
TBS was, that one?
17. Did you hear? I said Scrambled Porn. That was 98, 99. Or
Yeah.
that was like a Red Shoe Diary. There was one sleepover we had where we had a free weekend of Showtime. This is, I mean, this is elementary school, so I didn't know it yet. And Red Shoe Diaries with David Duchovny was playing on Showtime. And we just are like 5th graders, slack-jawed, like, what in God's name? Just total, like...
Just all you had to do is be friends, dude. Here we go. It's now episode 5 where I'm going to have to mention this chap again. But yeah, just had to be friends with Kenton back in the day because, the Elmores loved their entertainment and still do to this day. But they always had Showtime and HBO and everything else. So I distinctly remember nights where our parents were going to hit the town. We'd be home and him and I would be, half a Papa John's pizza deep with our Mugzillas of soda watching Taxi Cab Confessions.
I was hoping you'd say that.
if it went late enough and people started to fall asleep, it was not unlikely that like an Emmanuel was going to be on, which is like not G rated in any
No,
capacity.
that's X rated. I mean, the Emmanuel series is like a soft core. Like,
Yeah,
there's a bunch of them, right?
yeah, and it was formative years, man, where you're like, oh, well, here it is, and then go home to just basic, you
Man.
know, gateway television at the house. But nonetheless, yeah, I remember that Legends fondly actually, and that's kind of my first sense, I guess, maybe of this too, if I have to think about it. Not just a singular track, but like kind of getting a picture of the whole thing. One question I do want to ask because you said it. You said that you went and purchased this album at that age. Like what funded your bank to get records? Did you mow the lawn? Were you a
Yeah,
lawn guy?
I was the lawnmower. I always enjoyed that. I still do, as you know.
Oh yeah.
I won't say that in case they. Okay. I basically had an unfortunate gardening accident, like a spinal tap drummer. No, mowed. I mopped. I vacuumed. Emptied the trash. I cleaned up the dog's poop.
So would you position it as like, hey, mom, dad, I want to get this album, or would you ask for cash and then go get it
No,
yourself?
I had an allowance for those chores, so I would save up. And back then CDs were $10, I suppose. And I think that even if I would have been short on cash or something, I didn't ask for toys. Occasionally a video game, but my big thing from basically 8, 9 years old was a CD. And
Yep.
I think they probably thought that was actually probably okay. That, oh,
Yep.
well, he's into music and that's really the path he's going down. So, yeah,
And CDs to me never felt like a heavy lift.
no.
It was like I want to have this, and it was entertainment and something my parents knew that was like long lasting, and I think they looked at it somewhat the same as like an album. So
But you know what I
they
would
were
not do? I wouldn't buy that shit at Sam Goody because that was like $18 for a CD. I don't know what moron bought stuff there. Go to Best Buy, go to Circuit City. If you did, I'm not calling you a moron. I didn't mean
no,
that.
actually, everything was fine. We would also make the pilgrimage out to Best Buy Circuit City, but it wasn't until a little shop called Hastings opened up in County Fair Corner.
Mm.
I guess it's now right next to what would be like, what is that place called? Blondie's or something?
Uh, the bar, Goldies.
Yeah. So the little inlet right there on the exact corner. It was this like CD mega superstore called Hastings, and
Yeah,
they
okay.
had like music DVDs, CDs, some video games, I think, but they were discounted. They sold T-shirts. It was sort of like the first like knock on a Virgin Record superstore where you could get posters and all things music. So dude, Kent and I would go in there and spend hours, and this was wholeheartedly one of those stores where, in hindsight, I look back and there, at any given time there would be a group of 5, 6 9 to 13-year-olds walking in just browsing. And most of the time, dude, back then we were wholeheartedly just like window shopping. That was our doom scrolling. It was like, let me walk into a store, let me go aisle by aisle. I will look at every t-shirt, every poster. What I'm doing right now are taking mental notes for my Christmas list, my birthday list, what I will get whenever I get that $15 in my pocket, and come back here and spend it. But we would always get the most dirty looks, dude, from like all the clerks, even at Best Buy, most often, that like we were there for malicious reasons, to lift something and so forth. But they used to have those like ungodly CD Jewel extenders.
Yeah, the
You remember
long boxes.
plastic long boxes that you had to like take up to the counter. They would unclick it from there and stuff. So I think there was an idea maybe that it made it easier to like thumb through like it's a record or something.
The initial
or,
idea was that instead of having to buy entirely new not cabinets, but shelves for CDs, you had these long boxes, which were originally paper, but it was a total waste, so that you didn't have to replace your record. The same shelves you would use for LPs, you could just put the long box in there. So that's the first reason why. But yeah, those plastic things, I remember them, whatever clicking apparatus they had to do to get it off, and there was probably a security tag in there or something too.
but a few albums I got from there. One of the Master P originals,
Yes.
Silk the Shocker, things of that nature were what we were into back then, man. But we would just cruise our bikes up there. We'd park them unlocked. We'd probably pop over to Batter's Cage, check out some, baseball, basketball cards. And if we had time, pop into the county fair cinemas for a $3 movie.
Love it.
And and head home. And that was pretty regular for any summer day, man. So there were weeks where we were popping into Hastings like literally 7 days a week to browse, window shop, and figure out what it was that we wanted. And you also do that was like your pop culture, man. You saw the new releases, you saw what was out there. That it armed you with the ability to go to school on Monday and talk intelligently about what was out there on the market, dude. Between that, VH1 and MTV, you're dead in the water if you didn't keep up with the times. And of course, ESPN to be able to go back to school and talk about what was going on, So
I did buy one CD from Hastings. Now that you mention it, James Gang Greatest Hits.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
I wanted James Gang Greatest Hits. They didn't have it at Best Buy or Circuit City. I think I called Hastings and said, "Do you have the best of the James Gang or whatever?" And they're like, "Well, we have one of them." And I was like, "Great!" So I got that because of Funk 49 and Walk Away. And I was kind of in a Joe Walsh thing. So I did buy one CD from there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, continuing on.
Oh, yeah. So, wait, what? Over the Hills and Far Away, right. So VH1 Legends, Channel 52, back in the day. But no, this song, it is the old idea of light and shade. It's the dynamicism. It's the acoustic to electric. It is just an indelible riff. I will say the acoustic guitars in the intro, they just, oh man, especially when that second guitar comes in and doubles up what Jimmy's doing. Sounds so good. It's got, the lyrics are kind of abstract and purposefully mysterious, and you could really interpret it any way you want to. But Robert's melody, the ba-na-na-na-na-na, how he reaches that as he did so confidently is just awesome.
The band up until this point was somewhat against releasing singles too, right?
They did. They usually release 2 singles an album, but they did not do much in the way of promoting them. So, for example, Led Zeppelin 4, Black Dog was a single. Rock and Roll was a single. They charted in the top 30. This was a single, as you saw in the notes, along with Dia Mak'er was a single as well. And that was actually a top 20 hit.
Yeah, that always surprises me. I love the song. I always equate it with like an outdoor wedding and you're underneath like one of those big, massive plastic tarps or whatever. But interesting. Okay, so Over the Hills and Far Away. I mean, I don't know what needs to be said about it that we haven't already addressed. I mean, it's up there in probably the top 10 to 15 Zeppelin songs of all time.
Wow.
For everybody, I would think.
I said whoa, but I think that's probably a fair thing to say. And then on top of that, while there are parts of it that are very typical Zeppelin, think about the guitar solo. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we saw Fool in the Rain, Zeppelin play that. And the thing about that guitar solo is really low. It's almost like a bass guitar solo. He's so low on his fret. Same thing with the beginning of Over the Hills and Far Away, on top of a completely different chord progression. So even within this typically Zeppelin song, they found some really cool wrinkles. I got to ask you this, though. The clavinet outro, yay or nay? The song fades, the clavinet fades in, and then it kind of swells to an ending. Is it too long? Is it just right? Does it strike you?
Strikes me. I sort of have the same sense as what we were talking about with the sped up lyrics and the song remains the same. I don't really here's another long pause, but I don't really admit to thinking that critically about these songs as I listen to them now or in the past. Like, it is what it is for me. And I think I sort of side with the band in terms of their thought process and putting it in. But now that you say that, it's like, yeah, it's probably a little long-winded and lengthy, and may bode to add, especially with what's next on the album, to sort of cut down on the outcome of what they've done here for sure. So.
Yeah, I think it loses steam. I think that just a traditional fade out that. Honestly, that's the only criticism I will levy against this song. I love it. Like, if you turn it up just right in your car, it'll get you with the ba-dum, ba-dum. But it's out of all their entrances, so to speak, maybe the most powerful as a full band. Like, holy shit! Like, just rocket launch.
Lost some lost some voice to this song before too in the car. Especially on the radio, man. If you're ever still listening to just like local radio at any time, I mean, now in the past 10, 15 years, and this song comes on, it's one of those where it's like, I mean, yeah, you're cranking it.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, it still has that power. So, Over the Hills and Far Away, track 3. We're moving on to track 4, which is the Crunge. And I don't say that with disdain, but more confusion. The Crunge is a filler track if there ever was one. They are not taking themselves seriously. They admitted themselves it was kind of a joke. They had fun doing it. It sounds like it was fun doing it. And it's kind of funky. Where do we begin on the Crunge? Oh, you texted me. You were like,
I would
the Crunge.
say number one for our listeners, like blindly, can you say that you have listened to the Crunge? Honestly. And if so, I would love to hear feedback on any platform on a takeaway from somebody that holds this song near and dear to their heart with like a takeaway or story from why and like when it resonated with them. Because for me, I'll be honest, I am still unsure if I'd heard this song before, like after that listen. And there are moments in this song where I'm like, God damn, like this is fucking good. Like musically, like I mean, let me put this in Dave speak. Yeah, like it's noted here. There's a small connection, number one, with the fact that Robert's line, "Have you seen the bridge?" And then there's a D&B connection on "Anyone seen the bridge?" Which they do. Never even noticed that, number one. Secondly, though, it sort of reminds me of like something like the rooftop or rooftop by Dave, like something where it like there's just moments where you're like, all right, I'm feeling it. Other moments you're kind of like, I could go get a beer or take a pee break here during this song if it were to be played live.
And I think that it's because it comes on the heels of such a classic Zeppelin song, where even back when you would have listened to this in 1973, you knew Over the Hills and Far Away. Like, that grabbed you. That was really good. They had immediacy to it. And then all of a sudden, you hear this funk workout, and while it is funky and the musicianship is really good, if you were listening to this album through 3 tracks, thinking we might have another classic on our hands, then this song started playing. And I'm not disparaging this song any more than I have to. I'm trying not to telegraph anything here, but it's one of those, there's good filler and bad filler. I just don't know where I'd place this on the filler spectrum. It's okay to have filler. That's every album does. Not everything has to be a classic on an album, but I think this is maybe in the same way that hats off to Roy Harper on my favorite Zeppelin album, number 3. I don't necessarily like that song, but I knew what they were trying to get across with it. Like it was a middle finger. The Crunge, I'm not sure what they're trying to get across with it, and frankly, they might have been trying to get anything other than we like James Brown and here's our take on it. So I don't know. It's like I can listen to it as I did on the way back from St. Louis and enjoy it and get kind of a chuckle out of it. But I'm also totally fine when it ends. And I proverbially flip the record back over to side B.
Yeah, no, I agree. And let me just ask you this question.
Yeah.
The Crunge. I mean,
What does it even mean?
If it were named almost anything else, and I don't know what that would mean. Like, God, who knows? I can't come up with an alternative name right now, but I think the name overtakes what the song is also, and that's hard to get away from. Like, in an album where there, aside, I guess, from Dear Maker, it's like there's pretty by the books labeling of tracks by the band, and then this one sticks out number one like a sore thumb, but so does the track. So it's kind of on the ladder of the where is this filler song land in my book, only because it's like I always ask myself with any album, whether it's Dave Matthews Band, Pearl Jam, Foo Fighters, Zeppelin, you name it, what would the album be if this song didn't exist? And I would wholeheartedly say that I don't think I would ever know this song existed or would miss it if it was gone, which isn't even a stab at it. Again, I don't have enough experience with it. I have no sheer cosmic takeaways of the song or memories of, where I was or what I was doing when I heard it. And then when I do listen to it, I'm like, I have moments where I'm like, this is chunky and it's fun. And they weren't taking themselves seriously, but it also works. And in the definition of Spicy Biscuit, not our podcast definition of Spicy Biscuit, which is top tier song, it is a Spicy Biscuit because it is very mofro, you know, rickshaw Billy Burger Patrol, if you will. Like it's chunky. I guess it's crungy, right? It is just something that is standalone. But would I call it cohesive for this album, especially coming on the coattails of Over the Hills and Far Away? It's sort of like scratch your head. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, it hasn't, all these years, hasn't grown on me other than I can appreciate it in the 3 minutes I listened to it, but I still can't place it on the album as far as like what is it doing.
For it to end side A, like, and I always bring this up, but listening to the vinyl and you're like getting to the end after the first 3 songs of this, and you're like, they've done it again. They've done it again. They've got me hook, line, and sinker. And then, you notice that needle trending towards the middle of the album and realize that was like the end of side A.
Yeah.
And you're flipping. Now, I can only imagine it would add some peculiarity to where my mind would be going at that point. And I'd sort of be like, I mean, you'd have to imagine if you're on album 5 of a band and you're that excited at that point, you would be labeled probably a super fan of Zeppelin at that time in history. And then you're sort of flipping this over and I guess hoping that side B lands, because sort of at that point be thinking the wheels are falling off.
Yeah, where are we going here? It's like a set list at a Dave show. Like, Dave, what were you doing, Dave? The Crunge has a 9/8 time signature, which is very unusual. And the weird structure, like the fact that it doesn't really have a chorus or anything like that, it inspired Robert's line, "Have you seen the bridge? Where's that confounded bridge?" Okay, Gordon Fletcher was the reviewer for Rolling Stone. This is the first time I'm going to mention him on this podcast, but not the last. He gave The Crunge a negative review, calling it, quote, a naked imitation, along with Dear Maker, as well as easily the worst things the band had ever attempted. Ouch. Now, we'll get to Do Your Maker. I don't necessarily agree with that, despite its throwaway nature. One thing, Ben, before we move on to side B, I forgot to mention this when discussing Over the Hills and Far Away, and how highly it is regarded. And this is kind of to contrast it with what came next with The Crunge. Andrew Unterberger of Spin in 2014, he ranked Over the Hills and Far Away as Zeppelin's best song. Period. He said that it best demonstrates just about everything the band does well. Critic Bill Wyman, not the Rolling Stones bass player, but critic Bill Wyman, writing for Vulture in 2015, ranked it as Zeppelin's 6th best song. And then Pitchfork, which is an alt-rock publication that does some classic reviews, they reviewed the reissue in 2015 and said Zeppelin is most in the zone on Over the Hills and Far Away, which is on a very short list of best Zepp songs ever wrote. Was I perhaps underrating the stature of that song?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, again, there's tried and true Zeppelin songs you would just put up there on Mount Rushmore, and like I'm not saying in my personal collection, because I think in the journey so far, you and the listeners have noticed like my takeaways for my Spiciest Biscuits are sort of the unsung heroes for the most part. This is another one of those that, not to give away my rankings, but is fantastic. It does encapsulate all that Led Zeppelin has to offer. They do it at a time that is when they've got that blank check, so to speak. They didn't have to, but it was there, and it's. I would put it on for somebody that's never heard Zeppelin before, and it would give them a full sense of what the band is, and it would probably want to make them explore everything the band has to offer. So What more would you want at that point?
I think that's fair. All right, we're going to flip this record over to side B. Dancing Days. This is covered, actually. I'm sure you've heard it. It was a Chris Cornell. There were Stone Temple Pilots did a cover of this. That was pretty faithful. But Dancing Days is not a classic or anything, but it is a sort of joyous rocker that matches its name. Now, I would not say that this is on my top half of Zeppelin list, Ben, but I will say that it is a pretty cool riff that was inspired by Indian music. And the celebratory nature of it was recounted by Eddie Kramer, the engineer. He said, quote, "The truck doors are open. We're playing back what we just recorded. The lads decided to get into it and dance around to this great track." So the band was really fond of it, and they did play it in 1972 before the album was even released, not much after the album was released. So is this song, Ben, enough to recover the listener that might have been lost at the end of side A?
Yes, 150%. At this point, I would be like, okay,
we're back.
It's exactly what I think about today. Literally, as I'm going through the track by track list, and as I go through the whole album, it's also yet another one that I don't think it's gotten as much critical acclaim as Over the Hills and Far Away, but it's up there as well in a certain Zeppelin element that delivers for who they are and how they do it. It's always been up there in some of my favorites too. It was really hard at the end of the day. We're going to get to it shortly, but the rankings of this album, because it's so all over the place, but I would kind of lump, Dancing Days and Over the Hills and Far Away, like in a similar fashion, just because,
Wow.
Well, just solely because of where they landed for me, probably the time frame of where I first heard them, and like you said, the season of the album, like windows down, it's warm, and they're what was it? 105.9 used to do a block party.
Yes.
And this was like Dancing Days and Over the Hills and Far Away were often put on like a block party, so these would be together on those. It'd be like 3 or 4 songs from a band. They'd be like,
yeah,
back with the Zeppelin block party, and you're like, okay, so you're getting some deep tracks and some familiar tracks, and this was always on there. So I think I got my full fill of it, and I just kind of pinned it as, that's a greatest hit. So
yeah, it's borderline greatest hit, right? And they haven't done many of those compilations compared to other classic rock acts, but this has not appeared on Mothership, which is the greatest hits. It did not appear in the later days, early days, but it is one that I think they would certainly hold in their top half. And I do think it's a good opener for side B. I like the sort of droning riff. Robert, I think the lyric and the vocal, it's pretty easy because he's staying lower register with it. But it just has this sort of easygoing nature to it that I think matches the title. And as we've talked about, matches the sort of like windows down, driving in the summer kind of vibe. And I had this one driving back from St. Louis. Dancing Days came on. It was easy to sing along to. It's kind of a little bop. You're just kind of bopping your head. It's all right. I said it's all right. Like, easy. And this is an example, Ben, I think, of a band that, with the Crunge, they weren't taking themselves seriously. But I don't know how good that song is. They are not taking themselves that seriously on Dancing Days. But I think it's just an objectively tight little rock song. And this is a good example, I think, of looseness.
The Indian inspiration is intriguing as well, because now that you say that, I don't think I'll be able to look at this song the same ever again either, but it's not in a negative connotation. You hear that like Ravi Shankar-ish tone of like what would be a sitar, with the way that Jimmy is bending those notes and the riff. Excuse me. It makes me wonder too, man. There was like Stones had their Indian influence, Zeppelin had their Indian influence, the Beatles sure as hell had their deep dive in George and their Indian influence. That I think it's also funny just to know the parallels of like where these things came from, but it's also encapsulating, man. If you've ever done a deep dive on any Ravi Shankar or things like that, it's hypnotizing in a way, and that's what I would call this song. It's hypnotic, and then the story of them, popping the truck doors open and dancing around. Like, I get the sense of that, and it's a happy song. It's a hypnotic song, and the riff just bodes well with that peculiar sense too because you listen to it and it's like, well, I guess hats off too to Robert and just the way he layers his vocals over that incredible riff is another thing. It's both shocking and hypnotic at the same time, which I think is why it is what it is to me. I'm like, how does this even work? It doesn't seem like it should work, and it works. So
yeah, there's even lines like "I got my flower, I got my power, I got that woman who know." Like, I just like his sort of. Here's why the vocal works, I think, at that lower register. Jimmy's doing some really cool stuff in the verses. He does that. He gets really high on the guitar on that overdub. So there's cool stuff going on in this. And again, not a certified Zeppelin classic like maybe others, but I do think that this is one that over the years I've grown to appreciate more. And the live version on the How the West Was Won live album, before the album was even released, was a really good indication that this band liked this song. It's kind of surprising it didn't stick after that, but overall I think this was kind of a return to, okay, the Crunge was what it was, but so far we're basically batting 4 for 5. I think in the eyes of most listeners, we're batting 4 for 5, right?
Sure.
And
I'm curious too, did the track name come after the story or
I think that because I think it was just in the lyric, Dancing Days Are Here Again.
Yeah.
It's just, and you know what? It kind of, if you envision, like,
well, I mean, it doesn't say that the truck doors are open and we're playing back what was just recorded vocally.
That's true. That's true. I feel like this
maybe
though.
it was instrumental riffs and they were dancing, and then he's like, "We're dancing and the dancing days." I don't know. I wish we could do a deeper dive into the song.
That'd be cool. If it were inspired by their dancing to the instrumental track, I mean, yeah, I could see that. I do think, though, that this has, if I were to envision, like Dazed and Confused style, a camera following like a Grand Am or something into the parking lot of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum or a sports arena or whatever, to see Led Zeppelin in 1972, I might choose this song as the soundtrack of high schoolers going to see Zeppelin in 1972. It seems to fit in some way.
Like a Detroit Rock City facade, cruising down the highway, the dome in the distance, and this is the song jamming. That'd be perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that
I don't know why that image kind of conjured in my mind. So Dancing Days opens up side B, and it continues with a top 20 single, which is very unusual for Zeppelin. That is Do Ya Mak'er. Well, now, Ben, I'm going to tell you the joke. You might have read this on Wikipedia as we were doing a little bit of research here. But do you know the etymology of Do Ya Mak'er?
I do not.
Okay, so here's the joke. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
You need to reply to what I say with Jamaica, okay? Okay, here we go. My wife, she's gone to the West Indies.
Jamaica?
No, she went on her own accord.
Oh.
You get it? Like, did you make her?
Yeah.
Did you make her? Jamaica? That's the joke. Very British, I suppose. Now, the title is often mispronounced by FM disc jockeys, if that still exists, as Do Ya Mak'er. It is not necessarily that, though even I fall into that trap myself sometimes. This is kind of an interesting hybrid, Ben, between, it's not quite reggae, it's got some 50s rock doo-wop influences. I will say it's pure pop. I mean, it's an easy chord progression, it's an easy lyric, a great drum sound, by the way. The drums are awesome on it. And yet, and this seems kind of confusing to me, some people hate this song. Do you hate Do Ya Mak'er? Jamaica?
I do not. I don't hate it. It's not like up there with my favorites. Again, I knew we were going to teeter-totter with giving some away from the rankings in this song because it's impossible not to. But dude, you could literally play this song at any wedding midway through, as people have already caught their buzz, but it's well before they are completely gone, or you get to the sing-along portion, or God forbid you're at a wedding that's got the chicken dance or the cha-cha slide.
Ugh.
This is that, dude. I mean, not the Cha Cha Slide, but this is a song that could just be there and be okay with what it is. Um, I never got the reggae sense. I'll be honest with you, and like I'm a bass player, so if there was an essence of reggae, I completely missed the mark on that one for like my entire life. Um, I just took it as sort of a clever turn in the epicness of the Zeppelin catalog that was like, I don't know, something they were doing and trying that worked. I was stunned at the fact that this was so critically acclaimed in terms of like where it landed, like as a single and um for some a fan favorite. I don't also get that side, so I'm kind of stuck sandwiched between like I don't dislike it and I don't love it. Um, I also don't turn it off. So
I don't
take that as
either. I never have, man. I've always liked it, and it was on WGKC back in the day, so it was kind of a classic rock, not staple, but it was part of the Zeppelin rotation. And we heard it then, and it was actually when I bought this album, it was this and Over the Hills and Far Away that I went to at first because they were the most familiar. So the rest of it I really had to kind of wean myself into. But now Do You Maker was not necessarily the band's favorite. They never performed it live. John Paul Jones, not a fan of it. He said it was treated as a joke and not thought out well. Robert Plant, though, thought it could be a hit, and he said, let's make it a single. And that was smart because it was a top 20 single. Now, Jimmy defended it in 1977. Quote, I didn't expect people not to get it. I thought it was pretty obvious. The song itself was a cross between reggae and a 50s number. Poor Little Fool, Ben E. King's Things, stuff like that. So, yeah, doo-wop, a little bit of reggae. Now, I mentioned the Rolling Stone reviewer Gordon Fletcher. He reserved his harshest criticism for this album for this song. He said it's, quote, a pathetic stab at reggae that would probably get the Zepp laughed off the island if they bothered playing it in Jamaica. He continued by saying the track is obnoxiously heavy-handed and totally devoid of the native form sensibilities. But Ben, as you said,
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. If somebody said, hey man, this is reggae, I'd be like,
is it?
No. But that's not the argument here. And I think because somebody tried to label it as reggae, then that was the connotation that was taken over. Because I'd say the same thing, man. If you teed me up and said, Ben, you got to throw this track on, man. This is like some epic reggae shit. And then I put that on, I'd be like, are you smoking the Haitian lettuce, dude? Because like this isn't what I'm getting from it, but it's not bad. It's just not reggae. And then I would take an approach of like, if they're spinning this as their own reggae track, we may have issues because I'm not down with that, I guess, as in terms of what I'm feeling from it. But on the flip side, dude, it's such a fun song.
It's fun.
Dude, I there's certain songs that Zeppelin encapsulates, and like, you know, you and I took stabs at playing like Days Confused and, you know, some other things in like pre-band practice jams, but like I feel that this would be one of those songs I would be obsessed with playing live because of what it is, right? Like there's some of those songs you're just comfortable with. You can move like you want to move on stage. You know it like the back of your hand. And I would almost feel like this would be that song for me where I'm like, dude, I got this. And you know the crowd would be dancing. You know everybody be into it. So, yeah, I would stick this like sandwiched right in the middle, dude, like of my feelings. I don't hate it. I don't love it. And I never turn it off. So.
Yeah, I think that right there is, you know, when you look at a band's intent, their intent was not to make a masterpiece of the song. They were having fun, and I think this is a much more successful version of maybe what the Crunge was trying to be, which is like a genre exercise. Let's see if we can do this. And they did it here, and I think they did it well, if unorthodox, if people kept getting their panties in a bunch about reggae. But to me, it was always a 50s rock thing more than that. Now, Axl Rose.
Oh, I saw this. Yeah. Please. Yeah, this is awesome.
He cited Jamaica or Jamaica as a song that meant a lot to him as a teenager. Quote, that got me into heavy rock. Axl Rose. And in 2019, Rolling Stone ranked the song number 20 on its list of 40 greatest Zeppelin songs. Ben, I think this is a fun song. I think it's nowhere near Zeppelin's top 20.
I'd have to agree with that. But in the same tick, man, like, I always talk about resonating tunes, and could you give somebody a glimpse of the power and capabilities of Led Zeppelin? And if I threw this in front of anybody, they'd be like, "Wow, like that was an experience." I don't know what that was, but man, you could like all-inclusive resort Cancun, Mexico in 2025. You put this on at 1:30 a.m. a couple hours before last call, the whole bar's dancing. I now today. So, I mean, it packs a punch. It packs fun. It packs everything you'd want. From Robert's melodies to a great riff and a fun and simple drum beat that it adds just an essence, I guess, of what they're capable of doing. But I don't know if I would throw it within their. I don't know if I could possibly throw it in their top 20 if I was going to list out all tracks myself. I wouldn't be there for me. But
I'm not going to put in their bottom 10, and I think some do. And
like I said, the best way I can describe it is it's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite.
Yeah.
And I don't turn it off. Like if I had to just describe it to somebody, it's like I'll listen to the whole thing and I'll enjoy it. I'll probably dance a little bit, sing a little bit, but I wouldn't put it in my. It would probably be on my second or third version of, what to listen to for Zeppelin. It wouldn't be on my greatest hits.
Tier B or C. Yeah. Now we get track 7 here, and this. I get the idea might be in both of our tier A's. No Quarter. It's funny, Ben, because when I was younger, I can distinctly remember when No Quarter clicked. At first it didn't, because it's a slow burner and it's very dynamic. I mean, you can barely hear the electric piano at the start of it. But we were visiting my aunt and uncle in Iowa, and we went to an outlet mall for some reason. And on the drive from this outlet mall back to their place in Cedar Rapids, I had the Discman with Mega Bass, as you so often had to do back in the day. And I put on No Quarter on the drive back, and I was kind of sleepy mid-afternoon, kind of, and it hit then in just a way that I don't know why it hit then. And ever since then, I'm like, that song is, it works. It's one of those where they intentionally were trying to make this, I think, really, really good and really, really different. And they succeeded. And it's not just the fact, Ben, that this has a really dark and dirgy kind of riff to it. It's the fact that it is produced in such a way from the really dry sound. The guitar sounds like a synthesizer. The keyboards. This sounds alien. It sounds unlike anything else on this album, and frankly, anything else they had done to this point. And the last thing I want to lead you into this, do they have a chorus that grooves as much as this? Just think about doodle-diddle-dam, doodle-diddle-dam, and Bonham and the bass. To me, this is Zeppelin's potentially best groove in a song that's not necessarily remembered for that.
Yeah, I agree. Man, I hope our listeners are not as annoyed as I am when I have to constantly say I agree or 100% to you, but like it's hard not to in certain situations, right? Especially with Led Zeppelin. Promise we will get there with other bands and other artists as we do miniseries.
Well, maybe it was Zeppelin because you don't know my Spicy Biscuit rankings, and I think there might be a very controversial thing I'm about to do.
I don't mind either, and I think so as well. I am happy, number one, that they discuss to the masses that there is a lack of quarter. Love that, right? In whatever capacity that is. It's supposed to be a joke. Nonetheless.
I'm sorry that I didn't respond earlier.
This song to me hit when, number one, not to, and I guess this is not a good saying anymore, apparently, especially not in Louisville, Kentucky, but hate to beat a dead horse. I constantly have to look for another way of stating that. I won't go like a line I drive at 5 on the folks for the horse listeners, but I always feel
which by the way, that was me in my younger broadcasting days, thinking that it was funny to like joke about was it Barbaro?
Yeah, you joked about Barbaro and Elmer's glue after his fate in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, it was in poor taste.
But nonetheless, here we are discussing No Quarter, and I have to shout him out for this. It's Don Elmore yet again. If you can't tell, he still is a big fan of Led Zeppelin and was a huge formative influence on why I love them as well. But I think the minute that Don realizes that somebody also enjoys something, whether it's like bourbon or a good beer, a beer with a bourbon, music of any kind. Again, shout out to the Galactic Cowboys CD that I still owe you to this day because I misplaced it after you let me borrow it. Is the fact that he showed me No Quarter for the first time, and it was in his car, and this was post Maxima, and he had moved on to GMC Envoy that had like the system of all systems at the time, and this song, like you just said, has this like melodic run to it, and I just remember like I'm thinking Deer Maker or The Ocean or Black Dog when he's like, I've got a Zeppelin track I need to play for you. Not sure if you've heard it before. And as a kid, you're always kind of shaking your head like, I've heard everything, like,
Yeah.
But then he puts it on and you're like 50 seconds into this song and it's now taking hold and you're on a journey, dude. And like, I remember the bass thumping in the truck and just how like, you didn't know when it was going to end. You had no idea what was going to happen, where it was heading, what it was doing, but you also didn't want it to end and didn't want it to stop whatever it was doing in that moment. It's sort of the wish of like, man, I wish Out in the Tiles was longer. This is it. Like, this is giving you everything you'd want and more with a punch. This is up there for me personally with songs that I absolutely adore from Zeppelin, and it's up there because it's a standalone. Like, it is unlike any other. Nothing came before it, nothing came after it that reminds me of anything No Quarter. And one that I would absolutely put my foot down about playing almost at every show that we would have if I were in the band. I'd be like, I will refuse to play if we're not playing No Quarter tonight. Like,
and they did. Basically, from when it came out in '73, it was a staple. And John Paul Jones showcase. I think that early on, my reservations about the song were when I watched The Song Remains the Same, which is not a great live show, just by their standards, and it just doesn't translate. And No Quarter has some cool moments, but his longer piano solo, along with his little fantasy sequence where he's saving some damsel in distress or something, it just bored me when I was younger. I think as a studio cut, it's pretty much flawless. And the solo he has is tasteful and it's quick. And I got to shout out Jimmy Page, who's not the star of the show here in this track. One of his best guitar solos. It's jazzy, it's kind of funky. And meanwhile, John Bonham turns in one of his best drumming performances. I mean, it's all groove. He's not doing any crazy fills or anything like that, but that groove that shuffle. And there's certain moments, Ben, during this song, I was listening to it on the way back from St. Louis, and I'm reminded that within the first 20 seconds, the first low D, boom, that comes across your stereo, it's keyboards, and then John Paul Jones hits that bass pedal. Boom, and it goes right up your spine. It's spooky. Yep. In a way that I said Immigrant Song scared me as a kid. This one kind of did too, but it wasn't as immediate because it's 7 minutes long, but it's an earned 7 minutes. For fear of revealing anything, I don't want to heap too much praise on the song, but I mean, come on. It's what it is. It's No Quarter.
And I have to finish my thought on the Don Elmore saga because there is like 90% of my brain that says that is the first experience I had with No Quarter. The other one, though, is that it came in a cover form and that I went back and revisited and realized that Zeppelin was the originator of No Quarter. But I think for sure there was a time frame where I had the sense that it was a Tool song because they do an incredible cover of No Quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, we could go on and on about this one for sure, but I don't want to necessarily ruin anything.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's wrap up here with The Ocean. And this one right here being track number 8 of 8, the album closer, is signature Zeppelin riff rock. and it's a fun riff with a kind of funky time signature. I think that I want to make sure I get this right. It's 4/4 alternated with 7/8. Oh wait, hold on, Ben.
Oh, sorry.
Rick Rubin.
Wait, yes, Rick Rubin won. Fun fact too, dude. You're gonna love this. The American rock band Tool covered No Quarter for the soundtrack to Howard Stern's Private Parts, based on the 1993 book of the same name.
Yeah.
The use of the song in the soundtrack fell through due to Tool's decision to not allow use of the song in the film, leading to criticism by Stern. The cover eventually went on to be included in Tool's 2000 box set. Whoa.
Yes.
What a cool bit of lore right there, dude, because I know how fondly you love Private Parts #1.
Great movie.
And how crazy it is that happened. I bet you Maynard would think otherwise about making that decision now in hindsight if he could. But yes, Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin's remarked on the song structure, it takes such confidence to be able to get really quiet and loose for such a long time. Zeppelin completely changed how we look at what popular music can be.
Jesus.
And yet again, Mike, going through my notes for this was like, how do I formulate just a quick blip on my feelings for this song without giving too much away on where this is going to sit in my rankings? And that sort of did it for me. I'm like, it was the quiet and loose part of Rick's quote, because I said the same thing. I put space and time, not loose and quiet. And it's when you're listening to it and there is almost too much space and then there's not. And to me, that's like you're past the middle of the album right now and you're experiencing this, and I would probably be like hysterically laughing in my bedroom at this point because I would be like, they've done it again. They have blown my fucking mind, like these fuckers, like, and this would be what I would run to you. Like if you're down the block from me in the neighborhood, I'd be, hopping on the bike with the fucking baseball card stuck in the spokes to like race to your house to be like, I'm putting you on a track right now. We'll listen to the whole album together, but I'm putting you on something and it's going to do something to us. And I want you to hear this. That's what this would be for me. I would want to share it like immediately upon, the first listen. So
yeah, that's all fine and good, but Gordon Fletcher of Rolling Stone gave No Quarter a negative review. He described the track, along with Rain Song, as, quote, nothing more than drawn-out vehicles for the further display of John Paul Jones' unknowledgeable use of mellotron and synthesizer. Yikes. Well,
I would give anything to run into one of these like critics now, and like I wouldn't even like get, Northerly Island poster dark on them. Say something along the lines of like, do you still truly like have that thought, or were you on a journey back then to be a contrarian and you were just upset at something, your dog died or somebody pissed you? Like I can't help but think like if your job is to figure out how music moves you and what your first takeaways and thoughts are, that you would look at this track in any other light than it's new, it's refreshing, it's different for sure, it's dark as fuck, and I'm going to give this a negative review because
he's not done, by the way. He's not done with these.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't like the ocean. Shall we get to the ocean?
Let's get to the ocean.
Let's get to the ocean. This is a fun song. Zeppelin riff rock at its finest. I'm going to go out on a limb, Ben, and say that the two ending tracks on this album, while Houses of the Holy is not my favorite Zeppelin album by any stretch, through 5 albums, this is up there with Led Zeppelin 4 as the best 1-2 punch to end an album. So I ask you this. Do you take Going to California and When the Levee Breaks? Or do you take No Quarter and The Ocean?
Fuck. That is so hard.
It's not easy, is it?
Done 4 already, but now we're steady, and then they went 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, dude. Like, is there a world where you play The Ocean as the first track, period, for somebody that's never heard Zeppelin? Yes, right?
Perhaps because it's a very earworm riff, and it's fun. I mean, there's a joy to this song. To me, part of the contagious nature of the song is not just the riff, which is obviously catchy. It's the fact that it's about joy and happiness and the fun of being in a band and playing to people. That's it. I mean, there's simplicity to it that I really appreciate.
All right, so really quickly, ask me that question one more time.
Okay, so proverbial gun to the head, foot to the groin.
Groin.
Okay. We'll go with that. It's a little less violent.
Lock the gates.
Going to California and When the Levee Breaks, or No Quarter and the Ocean.
Oh, man, this pains me. Like I would plead with No Quarter in the Ocean, forgive me, but I have to go with Going to California and When the Levee Breaks.
You know that When the Levee Breaks is up there for me, but I think I'm going No Quarter in the Ocean. If we're just talking about, okay, right now I can listen to 2 Zeppelin songs back to back. Here are your 2 choices. I think I'm going No Quarter in the Ocean.
I'm going alternate, but there's no wrong answer here.
No, there's not.
It's all about where it hits you and what you feel. And for me, it's the alternative. But I also massive respect just to the 2 ending tracks. They do it, man. They understand their craft, for God's sakes. But the Ocean it's up there in the Mount Rushmore, I would argue. I mean, how is it not? You know, it's like I said, there's tracks of theirs that I would ease people into and would kind of look at them the whole time like you're looking at your wife during a really good movie that you've seen 1,000 times, hoping that that moment that you're waiting for resonates. This would be one where I wouldn't even have to look at anybody. I'm like, I'm going to throw this on, and I know people are going to dig it. So,
couple things about this. The alternating bars of 4/4 and 7/8 time is where you get that unique time signature. The Girl Who Won My Heart. Now I'm singing all my songs to The Girl Who Won My Heart is Robert's daughter, Carmen. And whenever they performed it live, he would update her age to whatever it was. When they recorded it, she was 3. It was performed in 72 and 73. Not much after that. Gordon Fletcher of Rolling Stone gave The Ocean a negative review, calling the track, quote, so diluted and filled with pointless humor. Jimmy Page's guitar spits jagged fireballs with John Paul Jones and John Bonham riffing behind him, but the effect is destroyed by ridiculous backup cooings and an overbearing killer coda that's so blatant it can only be taken as a mock of straight rock and roll. This joyless fucker. That's not in the quote. That's me calling Gordon Fletcher a joyless fucker. Ben, the coda of this song is one of my favorite Zeppelin moments in any Zeppelin song, where they just completely do a left turn into like, just, it's fun, it's joyful. Can we not have joy and fun when listening to rock and roll? That's what this song is to me, and I love that outro.
No doubt. I had to do a quick deep dive here as we're recording, looking into Gordon Fletcher, and this will piss Kenton off. It sort of looks like he may bash Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith.
Ooh.
This guy was on a warpath. Just by quick glimpse of what he's got out there. But yeah, what the hell, man? Somebody definitely pissed in his Cheerios, because the No Quarter is a acquired taste, if you will. It's I don't even like MGD, but it's like going to your grandpa's fridge, thinking that you're being naughty and grabbing a beer that's staring at you in the face to drink it with your buddy, and you get one sip in, and you're like, fuck that. Why would anybody want to sit here with this and enjoy it? Not to mention drink like as many of these as my grandpa does. But then one day you grow older, and you're like, I'm 7 MGDs deep right now.
Dude, this I will give him credit for this. This is a line from a review that he wrote for Bachman Turner Overdrive. Imagine Black Sabbath without instrumental dynamism and lyrical vision. Imagine Led Zeppelin without pyrotechnics. What you're imagining is Bachman Turner Overdrive, a lowest common denominator rock band that's found immense commercial success. I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but man, he is just... This is unbelievable, dude. This is about Leonard Skinner's second helping. Leonard Skinner's first two albums are like unassailable, okay? This is his quote. This group is frequently compared to the Allman Brothers, but it lacks that band's sophistication and professionalism. What was he? What? I don't know. I mean, I thought that John Mendelsohn was kind of a prick. This guy seems like insufferable.
Well, this guy, he made a list that I just found online. It's List by Schmidt, and that's not a joke. It's literally List by Schmidt.
Okay.
And it is Rolling Stone's 500 worst reviews of all time. Work in progress, in parentheses. But this dude killed it. I mean, there's well over 500 reviews here this guy's taken. And Led Zeppelin's House of the Holy rating of unfavorable by Mr. Fletcher is sitting in at 101 of 500. And I think that's pretty fucking accurate because I've not gone ahead at all to see what else Mr. Schmidt has here. Oh, worst review of all time. Arlo Guthrie.
Was it a positive or negative review?
These are all negative reviews. Yeah. So they're all 500 worst reviews of all time. But yeah, I don't, it doesn't compute with me that you would be on the journey at this time and listen to this song and be in that frame of mind, but who knows? Maybe
he trashed, or he was lukewarm on Exile on Main Street. I mean, I don't know what this guy.
They spotted him, dude. I mean, maybe he was waiting for him in the hotel lobby to get a quick glimpse and have a quick anecdote from one of the band members, and they were too busy to stop and talk to him. You never know. But it's absurd. So.
Well, the ocean, nonetheless, despite the grumpiness of Gordon Fletcher, is full of joy and happiness, and it's just, signature Zeppelin all the way through. And, we could talk more about the track itself, but it's one of those self-explanatory tracks because it's not asking for the listener to dig into the lyrics anymore or dig into the music. It's like, here's what we're really good at. And it's a band that I think 5 albums in have perfected the ability to write a good riff, to add a groove to it, and then the outro, the coda, if you will, is a really cool wrinkle that separates it from some of the earlier riff rockers. But that's Houses the Holy. And before we get into our categories, I think we should probably talk about the overall reception that this album got at the time. We talked about Gordon Fletcher.
Yep.
This was, as other Zeppelin albums before it, mixed. And I think that Led Zeppelin 4 probably set the bar so high for whatever the follow-up would be that anything less than that was going to get some lukewarm reviews. Rolling Stone was the worst of them. There were positive reviews in the bunch, but over time there's been some positive reappraisals of it. I mean, let's be clear. This has not been trashed by most people. In fact, many consider it a classic in their own right. Gordon Fletcher, one last thing about him. He called it one of the dullest and most confusing albums I've heard this year. It's not dull. I will give Gordon Fletcher this. There are moments that are confusing. It's not dull, though. I won't give it that. Robert Christgau, who is a somewhat surly rock critic in some ways, he liked it. He mocked No Quarter. He didn't like that song. And he found some tracks derivative of previous albums. I'm not sure which ones necessarily. But he found the side one was really good, and he liked the Crunge. So, hey, different strokes, right? Allmusic.com, they gave it 5 stars out of 5. Really praising the band's playing. Pitchfork, during the reissues, Houses the Holy might be Zeppelin's most impressive album on a purely sonic level. I would agree that the production is phenomenal. It is another Zeppelin Diamond status album with over 10 million sold in America. That is along with Led Zeppelin 1, 2, 4, and Physical Graffiti. Those are the 5 Zeppelin albums in America that have sold over 10 million copies. So,
I will say this too: if you put Houses of the Holy on vinyl, which I did, holy shit! Like it wasn't like a repressing either. It packs a different punch than what the others do. So, something happened.
Yeah, I think there's clarity to the mix. There's a warmth to it. It sounds inviting. I got to give them this. They, I think, were at their happiest as a band because they had arrived. The drugs and all the other kind of extracurriculars had not become such a distraction. where they didn't enjoy each other's company. It hadn't become a slog. I think that slog informs the next album we're about to talk about in a positive way. Physical Graffiti is a double album in every way that you would want it to be. This one, though, is kind of a anomaly with Led Zeppelin albums. And what was that look there?
I enjoy what you're saying. I'm just hyped right now. I just looked down at my notes and realized that we're just on the crust of the awards time.
Let's get to it. Should we?
Yeah, let's roll.
All right, okay. So we're going to do our spiciest biscuit categories here. I forget the order that we did it last time, so we can just alternate with each category. But what we're going to do is give awards, so to speak, to this album and its tracks and its performers, including Killer Line, which is a mix of lyric and delivery by Robert Plant. Alternative album title. So if it were not called Houses of the Holy, which is a great album title, what might it be called? MVP of the album, side A or side B, the Dustiest Crumpet, which is the worst song, and then we'll rank them all the way back up to the top song, the Spiciest Biscuit. Ben, would you like to do the honors for Killer Line?
Sure. I'll lead things off. My Killer Line, and I had two, and I was pretty definite on all other things. So I do want to drop them both, and then I'll have you, I guess, vote on which your favorite is. But I had two reasons. Oddly enough, both from the same song. So, these are the seasons of emotion, and like the winds, they rise and fall. I was like, man, that's just like. Can you name the song? I guess first.
Rain Song. Yeah.
So, obviously, to me, existential in manner, where I love anything that sort of puts you in your proverbial place in this atmosphere, which is, oftentimes puzzling. You're like, man, when somebody puts it so eloquently like that, it's just you're unable to look away. Like every time I hear that lyric, I'm like, God damn, Robert, like speak to me. Number two was upon us all, a little rain must fall. It's just a little rain. And I think I hit on it a little bit before when I was describing my thoughts on the song, but like my takeaway from that is there's often a negative connotation with it's raining. Like even my kids sometimes have like this, it's raining, like, and I remember being a kid, like looking at my mom, like, what are we going to do? And it's like, go find something, figure it out. It's like mostly because it meant we couldn't just go outside, play with our friends and run the neighborhood. But if you just take a minute and realize like there's, if not more rainy days than there are sunny, it makes the sunny days better. And if you figure out a way to embrace the rain and figure out a reason for it, it's also enjoyable. And, meant something. Also, I mean, the fact that I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and each year, the first weekend in May is the running of the Kentucky Derby, and 9 times out of 10,
every time,
there's a high percentage that is going to be a rainy Saturday. So, those are my two takeaways from this album for Killer Line.
Read the first one again.
Sure. These are all the seasons of emotion, and like the winds, they rise and fall. Then a couple bars later, it's upon us all, a little rain must fall. It's just a little rain.
What's your gut tell you?
I'm going to go with my second choice.
Yeah, I here's the thing. I think lyrically, the first one, but I think the second one, full package, because it's at the end of the climax, and the way he sings it, and that's basically delivering the message of the song. So, yeah.
Cool. I'll star that one. So that's it right there.
Okay, so upon us all. Got it. I am going to choose one from No Quarter. And it's just, listen, it's Vikings, it's Conquest, it's all that good stuff. Walking side by side with death, the devil mocks their every step. That's fucking cool, man. I mean, come on. And the way he delivers it so creepily, his sort of warbled vocal effect on it. I
mean, that's really honest, and you want to say deep, but not even so deep. It's like true. It's like in our entire life, we're not walking hand in hand with birth. We're walking. That's powerful shit, man.
It's so good. It's just the whole package of the chords underneath it and the way he delivers it so understated and creepy and the effect on his voice. Yeah, there you go. All right, I'll start off with the alternative album title. I try to avoid naming an album after a track on it.
Same.
But I did this time.
Oh.
Did you?
No.
Okay, good. It's not very imaginative. I don't think you're going to do better than Houses of the Holy. But if there were a signature Zeppelin song on this album, it would be Over the Hills and Far Away. And as the record itself isn't a hill, but it's like a collection of stones or whatever, and they're kind of climbing up and they're going to some destination and the far-off childhood end, whatever that Arthur C. Clarke novel is. My alternative album title is Over the Hills and Far Away. I think it would have worked. Houses of the Holy is better. Most of their album titles are better, but that's my option.
Thought-provoking. Like I said, my initial interpretation of the album cover was that this would have been great for Stairway to Heaven because it looks much more to me like a natural stairway to heaven. Over the Hills and Far Away as well, because you're wondering who are these humans / children and where are they going. So it looks extremely far away, but it looks like there's no end in sight. So I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Album title. Mine is a little bit more literal in sense to my takeaway of the album and like what Zeppelin was able to deliver. And I did it in one single word. So as a first title of an actual album from Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy is a long step in a direction of an album name versus where they were coming from. So I simply named it Patience. I felt like they were finally honest with themselves in a few ways, which one was, we can kind of let the proverbial reins off here and do what we want to do. We have the quote-unquote blank check. And they also added patience to songs that I feel would not have existed if they tried to write those same riffs and melodies into songs on 1 through 4. No Quarter would have come out as a completely different song at any time in the previous albums because I don't think they had the patience to give it the space that it needed at that point because it didn't have the blank check. So I just simply titled it Patience.
Okay. I like that choice, and I think it actually really highlights the most positive aspect of this album, that they were patient, they allowed things to breathe, and I think that because of their success that they'd reached, some bands would look at that as, oh crap, we got to be even bigger, but they did a pretty good job of not falling into that trap, and I think it makes for overall, if not a masterpiece of an album, it makes for an enjoyable listen. Okay, you lead off MVP.
Yeah, at this point, it's going to get a little bit tough album by album, and I try again just to be as in the moment as possible. What was your reference earlier to being in London and taking stride on the moment? What did you call it? I like that.
Oh, well, just like lived in.
Lived in, okay.
Yeah.
So my lived in is the way I try to approach these albums on my list, and I'm trying my best not to take a far and away approach to like my historical outlook on when these songs resonated with me or the album resonated with me at any point in time, just right then as I'm listening to it, and who to me is the most powerful voice on the album, so to speak. And this one, again, I've given him his flowers earlier on in our mini-series, but JPJ, I felt it was his influence on many of my favorite songs on this album, but across the whole 9 that he, in pure JPJ form, was able to influence things in a direction for the band that was the final product, like a silent maestro, without being a silent maestro, and adding some extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? Exploratory avenues for them in this album that just like hit home. And
it's just different. It's different colors on the palette, I mean, in that they had not really touched on before, thanks to him more than anybody else.
Exactly. And when he comes to the table with it, it's like, okay. And I don't know, man. Again, to be a bass player in any capacity, like it really depends on who you are and where you are in terms of the foundation of a band. But just to see a guy that, for all intents and purpose, all intents purposes, I would,
Intents and
you
purposes, yeah.
you see a guy who is the silent assassin. In interviews, he smiles. At the Kennedy honors, he just sat there and smiled. He's a quiet dude. He's softly spoken. He's honestly spoken. So I see a dude that behind closed doors with the band was like had to be an absolute heavy hitter influence on the direction of the band, and it comes through in this album specifically. You think Jimmy Page, you think Robert Plant, always far and away, and man, it's impossible not to hear John Bonham, but there were so many essences throughout this album where you smile and you go, JPJ, you sly motherfucker. Like I hear you, I see you, and I'm not talking about the bass. So
Yep, I went the same direction. I think that he adds a lot of color to an album that is much more, not much more, but in a different way, more colorful than some of the stuff they've done before. So I will go John Paul Jones as well, which leads into, and I'm not going to add anything because I think you did a good job of just encapsulating what he did to help diversify their sound with this album. All right, side A or side B? I'll begin with this one here. Side B. I find it to have just arguably the best 1-2 punch to end a Zeppelin album in No Quarter in the Ocean. Dancing Days is a cool little cut to open side B that I think it's grown on me over the years. And if Do You Mak'er is the weak link, it's a top 20 hit on Billboard and it's ear candy. You know, it doesn't need to be anything more than that. So I enjoy side B, and when I go back to this album, it is often to that last run of tracks, specifically the second half of side B. So side B.
love it. So for our listeners, as they go through this, if you're sitting there with a pen and paper and you're doing your own exercises, I will admit right now that, as you know, I usually allude to my favorite side by my rankings. So I'm always curious, should we move our rankings and let it speak? But I know that you rank your side A or B different. So
Yeah, you're fine.
nonetheless, mine is side B as well. And I will let you know that my first four tracks were dead 50-50.
Okay.
So to me, I was able to make my call. And my call came kind of the same way yours did, but I could put side B on repeat for like the rest of time if it was the only thing in my car, and I'd be perfectly happy. You answered it in the question of when the levee breaks going to California. And you answered alternatively with this side B, so that doesn't surprise me either. I just think it's perfectly formulated, especially coming off and ending side A with the Crunge, going into side B. You would be curious of what's next, and are you going to be as happy, I guess, when the album ends as you have been on previous albums, and side B delivers. So it was a toss-up, though, my top four, and that's how I do my rankings. So I kind of went with the overall resonation of what side B does to me from top to bottom.
Now, for Dustiest, Crumpet, and Spiciest Biscuit, we'll have you start with the rankings, okay? But I think that this is going to be a little bit unique. I would say let's predict each other's Dustiest Crumpet and Spiciest Biscuit. But I think it's fair to say that the Crunge has a high likelihood of being each of our Dustiest Crumpet, and that No Quarter has a decent likelihood of being both of our Spiciest Biscuits. So for our predictive part of this, could we each predict our second, and it might be where I'm incorrect about that, okay?
Oh, so let's go 7-2.
7-2. So I'll start predicting your 7-2, okay?
Go ahead.
I think your seventh pick is The Song Remains the Same. And
Okay.
I think your second pick is The Rain Song.
Okay. I think your seventh song is Deer Maker.
Okay.
And I think your second song is just toss up right now. Over the Hills and Far Away.
Okay. Let's hear your rankings. Start with the Dustiest and work your way up.
Got it. So Dustiest, Crumpet, the Crunge.
Yeah.
And I have to be fair here. In parentheses, I said it's an honorable mention because it is a true spicy biscuit. Like,
It is
it is
spicy.
at its core. And that's our definition that we've run with forever. It just so happens now we're taking a pivot to name it a great song. So the Crunge, I'm sorry. Sorry to anybody that's listening that absolutely loves that song. Again,
There won't be many.
we're ranking Led Zeppelin songs, guys. This is an exercise that I would not vote on my worst enemy, only because it's very tough. And however, this was pretty easy. All due respect. Number 7, you were 100% correct. The song remains the same.
Okay.
I know that will probably be another contested ranking for that, but it is what it is. Number 6, Dear Maker.
Mhm.
Number 5, and I got to be honest here too. I've got the little interchangeable arrows going to 5 and 6 because I wholeheartedly feel like I could interchange either of these and I would be just perfectly happy. So number 5 is Dancing Days, right above Dear Maker.
Okay.
Now top 4. So side B, number 4, The Ocean.
Wow. Here's the thing, though. I shouldn't say wow because that's still top half of the album, and it's not like you're not sliding it. And by the way, I don't hate the song remains the same pick. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't mind that at 7.
Yeah. Number 3, Over the Hills and Far Away.
Okay.
Number 2, No Quarter.
Wow. So number 1 is the Rain song.
And I got to tell you, man, like, in
Wow.
hindsight, if we were not doing a podcast, and I have to be fair and honest here, if you asked me for Led Zeppelin's Spiciest Biscuit, and we weren't doing it in connotation to what's their greatest song of all time, we're talking about, like, what's your Led Zeppelin Spicy Biscuit as it stands to the definition that we gave it years and years and years ago, I would probably put No Quarter there as, like, my hip shot answer. Now, in respect to what we do on this pod and how we do it, I listened to this album 3 times over. And in my description, I was trying my best early on not to be too, like, forthcoming in saying I almost want to change it, but then I wouldn't, and then I don't. It's almost like everything in life that you end up obsessing over, like a job. You wake up in the morning and, like, the last thing you want to do is get out of bed. I love what I do, man. Like, I love the world of IT. I love the company I work for. And by the end of the day, I'm usually, like, at least somewhat happy about the trend of where the day went and what I did, right? Much like teaching, I'm sure for you. Would I rather be at a Dave show or tailgating or at a bachelor party with you blokes? Of course, but it's the nature of the beast here. So I sort of took into account what this album did for me in the moment that I was listening to it, and I went back and forth, man. I'm like, No Quarter 1, the Rain song 2 would not be, by any stretch of the imagination, wrong, but it would be going against my better judgment on where I am right now and how I sort of rank these things. And I also have just gotten so many miles out of No Quarter and so much joy over a lifetime so far. It's up there for me, that the Rain song has sort of added a new essence and a new familiarity with the band that I a long time. And I was like, hey, I want to sort of relish in this and give it what it's worth right now for me. So
Cool. I dig the uniqueness of that pick.
I'm eager for you now because I think you gave it away. The Crunge and No Quarter for you are 1 and 8, yeah?
Yeah. The Crunge is number 8. It's my Dustiest Crumpet, but I think most Zeppelin fans would probably agree with that. My number 7, Jamaica, Dear Maker. I still enjoy it, and you called that correctly. Number 6, the Rain song. Yeah, it's never resonated with me, but it's not a thank you situation. It's not that I think it's kind of lame. It's just that I enjoy it okay when I'm listening, and if I'm in the right state of mind, I like the 7.5 minutes of just sort of chill. Emotionally, I know what Robert's going for, and yet it doesn't ever It's never like cut me to the core. I don't know. It's
For me and you, I think it's like wine. Mike, if I poured you a great glass of wine, right, with a good steak, and it was a peppery glass of wine, maybe from like the south of France, you'd be like, holy fuck, man. I don't know if I've ever really experienced that before. I don't foresee you leaving that experience and then going home and then buying your own bottle of something from the south of France and then drinking it repeatedly because of that experience. You will continue to pour Captain and and W. So I get where you're coming from with this. For me, I was
I
like,
enjoy
shit,
swill.
I appreciate the fact that like I heard something that gave me that like one-off time.
Sure.
But that's exactly why I put it there and why you put it here, which I think is brilliant. So this is the point of the exercise.
There we go. Yeah. Number 5, the song remains the same. I do have it a click above the Rain song, more because I think it's exciting instrumentally in some parts of it. I love the drum part. I think the guitars are great. The vocals have never done it for me, but I think it's still pretty fun. Number 4, so I'm in the top half now, 3 of which are on side B. Dancing Days, number 4. Kind of waffled back and forth on that because it's not as if the song is some masterpiece or anything, but I think that I've grown to really appreciate what that song is and the joy behind it. And I think this album, more than any Zeppelin album, has a lot of joy. Over the Hills and Far Away, number 3. It's a classic. The clavinet outro is a click too long. If they'd found a quicker way to end it, maybe just a straight fade out, it might have went all the way to number 2. But quite frankly, the Ocean, to call it underrated might be silly because it is appreciated. But it's not talked about in the way that like Black Dog is. And I'm thinking, I don't know, man. The Ocean has everything I want in a Zeppelin song.
You're right. And I feel bad in some respect putting it at number 4, but then I don't. Like, I look at things as what has been positioned to me and how things have been marketed and how often I hear things. And it's no knock on the band or the song, but man, if I like am turning to classic rock, but any local classic rock station that I'm on in any city that I'm traveling to, there is a higher likelihood I will hear the Ocean or Black Dog over just about anything.
Yeah.
At some point in my listening. And again, like I said, this is not like wrong on you for a shitty song because it's overplayed. That's not where I'm coming from with this. It's just that it's really hard to put up there with like a personal existential takeaway from what the song means because there's 1,000 places I've heard it and 1,000 scenarios in which I've heard it. So for this exercise, whenever we go through these rankings, I'm kind of like, man, these recent listens have been incredible. And in totality, historically, these songs have meant something to me. But most times, like we talked about with, Bob Seger's Like a Rock or anything. I mean, like some of those songs are inherently ruined because they were shoved down your throat in a Chevy commercial and not the way they were supposed to be presented. So not that the Ocean is that, but
I get
it. It's something that I have heard over and over again, and it definitely boded to the reason that I put it at 4 and not at 2 or 1, which it easily could have been.
That's fair. Number 1, No Quarter. I just think that it's up there with the Zeppelin's very best, and it's something they had never done anything remotely close to it, and they nailed it. And you used the word patience as your alternative album title. I think that really lends itself well to it, and yet I don't find it boring in any stretch of that patience. I think the Rain song is patient, but it can lose my interest. No Quarter is patient, but it never does.
Yeah. What kind of vehicle were you in the Quad Cities as you were listening to this on your Discman with the extra bass?
Oh, so when he said Quad Cities, I thought you were talking about a certain ex of mine who was from the Quad Cities. I was like, I don't associate No Quarter with her. No, I was up in
Des Moines. Sorry, you were in Des Moines.
No, it was around Cedar Rapids. So there is a little town, maybe 20, 30 minutes away from it, kind of like how we have Tuscola has the outlet shops. That's where it was, like 20, 30 minutes away from Cedar Rapids, and it was a sunny summer day. And you know how like I don't care what age you are, like if you go shopping and then it's 3:00 in the afternoon and you don't have to drive home from shopping and it's a 20, 30 minute venture back in your minivan or whatever, you kind of want to take a nap Like
Oh, dude,
there's something about driving at that time of day.
you're talking to a guy oddly enough fell in love with Steely Dan because of that same scenario where I would go shopping in the depths of a suburban mall with Auntie Gwen and Uncle Chris up in Chicago, who lived in the heart of the city. So there was no convenient mall to get to downtown Chicago, unless of course you're going to like Water Tower Place or strictly Michigan Avenue. And we would go to a mall somewhere on the outskirts, and typically on the way back we're listening to like the Moody Blues or Steely Dan or anything like. But I was probably slowly passing out in the back seat, and
It's relaxing.
it was time to get back. But like, I'm talking, what literal vehicle were you in? Was it a Honda Odyssey? Was
No, maybe the Honda Odyssey. This would have been like, I don't know, mid to late 90s. So I was maybe 10. It's probably like 96, 97. And yeah, probably my parents' minivan. If not a Honda Odyssey, a Chrysler is what the minivan we had before that. On our way back to my Uncle George and Aunt Kathy's house.
and was just like, get me out of here as soon as possible.
Probably.
Opted. Man.
But yeah, I mean, I just remember no quarter hit on that trip back. And I think what really got me, I knew the keyboards were the focal point, but I was like, man, Jimmy's guitar sounds really kind of, I don't know, like a sawtooth synthesizer. Like it just sounds different. And it really hit me when, and the drums are so crisp. And I thought on that particular day, in that moment, listening to No Quarter, it was like a eureka moment where even then I wouldn't have said that's my favorite Zeppelin song. That's grown in stature. But I think it clicked to me then that, oh, wait, this is not some boring 7-minute song with keyboards. This is something pretty cool. So it's just grown for me over the years, and it's my spiciest biscuit of Houses of the Holy.
Love that. Did you, at 10 years old, did you already have the blue drum set?
Not yet, no. It would have been a year or two away. I got that 7th grade, no, actually, because I had to do 1 year doing percussion in band at school, and if I still enjoyed it, my parents needed to make sure that before they bought me a drum set that I was committed.
Smart.
So what I did for that entire year, like 5th and 6th grade, I would set a chair next to my bed. I had drumsticks, and I had a snare pad. And I would just, listen to Zeppelin, and I would just play the drums on my bed, which is good practice because it strengthens your wrist, because a bed is it's not forgiving. It doesn't bounce back. So you kind of really got to build that wrist strength. But yeah, I would listen to Zeppelin, and the first thing I ever played on my blue Ludwig, as I mentioned in the last episode, was Misty Mountain Hop. But as years went on, and then I figured out the no quarter groove, that was always fun to play. I always love it and still do.
I was strengthening my wrist in different ways in my bedroom at that age.
Many were in their adolescence.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I asked because I was curious. Like, for me, I could see you in the back of the van with your headphones on, boosting your bass and listening to No Quarter, and thinking to yourself in that moment, like, all right, this has been a great trip, but like, get me the fuck home so I can start to smash these drums, because I've found a new influence of what I want to tackle.
It was either that, or let's get back to George and Kathy's so we can order what was called Paul Revere's Pizza. And they had this thing called the Terminator, which was like a 24-inch extra large cheese pizza. And I just always remember we would get that often when we were up there, and I was like, man, we've been shopping. I'm hungry. I want a goddamn cheese pizza. And I know that George and my dad, they're going to open up their case of beer, and I got some ice cold A&W cream soda waiting for me back there. Like, let's get back. But that no quarter really hit me at that moment.
I got to say this too, just because you said it, you teed me up for it, and this is with or without the podcast. We can completely cut this, but that moment in time right there you just described is why I'm so physically jealous of my kids this day and age.
Yeah.
Father's Day just passed, and for me, it's both a great time, but it's melancholic in form, because obviously my dad is no longer here, so it's like a subtle holiday where I wake up and the first thing I think about is that, and then I get greeted by my children, and all is well because I am myself a dad. Difference with this year is I was coming off a absolutely awesome Dave show with my boy in St. Louis after a nightcap of 99 nanners. Ugh. And I wake up to you heading out, and I sort of do my thing and pack up as well and head back to Evansville. And it's that second wave of the day that you're mentioning right now, where like shopping is over, or whatever the major plan was, if there was a game late afternoon and you guys were going to Jillian's or anywhere else to watch it, and then get home, and then you watched your dad, as you said, pop open the cooler and it was a Point or a Miller Lite, and you kind of had this like openness, like it was freedom at that point where you're like, all right, now it's my time. Like even though you're amongst your whole family, and it was still like, now they're giving me freedom to kind of do what I want to do because they want to do what they want to do, and
Yep.
we're kind of existing in this house in the backyard and the front yard, and as long as I'm not like bothering them by asking them to tee up my exercises for the next 8 hours, I'm pretty much golden until bedtime. I am inherently jealous of my kids in that right now because it's like such a great chapter and moment in the day in life of a kid that, what a cool thing, man. And the fact that you're no quarter and your, existential takeaway is that day and that time in Iowa, which is just so cool to me. So
time and place, man. I mean, time and place with so many songs. And that one, I was thinking about it before we recorded today. Like, that album, that whole album, I remember it must have been recently purchased because I was listening to that whole thing up there. But that was the first time I really gave the time and effort to listen to that song and let it just seep in. And I think that I needed a sleepy moment almost, like where you're just really relaxed at your fullest to just let it kind of sink into you a little bit. But that was my no quarter moment.
It resonates and puts your head high and low too. So good times, man.
Do we end with Billboard game or do we wrap this thing up? What do you think?
I think we should go ahead and wrap this one up, man. I think we did. We discussed it too. We discussed kind of where this landed. March 28th, 1973, reached number 1 on the Billboard Top 200. I think we just stick with what we got, man. We came back from a little hiatus of sorts with you across the pond and Dave and stuff, and I think we've given this album its love, what it's needed, and I'm stoked, man. We are like chugging right along here.
Well, here's the thing, Ben. I mean, like, House of the Holy is an anomaly in some ways in Zeppelin's catalog. And yet, as we talk through it, I began to appreciate what makes it different and the fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously. I really do appreciate that. Physical Graffiti is a behemoth. It's a double album. That's what we're going to do next week. And I think that as we go through the 9 plus 6? 15 tracks. We will do so in an expedited fashion so we can get more towards the rankings and then really kind of figure out why did we put this here over that. I'm excited, though, because I knew that you knew the first 4 Led Zeppelin albums. I enjoy this conversation a lot because I didn't know your knowledge of Houses of the Holy. I had to revisit it. Physical Graffiti, I don't know, other than the big songs, how familiar you are with it in its entirety. So I'm going to be really excited to take a big bite out of that next week, and it's a big bite because it's a true full-fledged double album.
I can almost assure you that what you think my Spiciest Biscuit is going to be is what it's going to be. I'm not going to try to...
I know what that is going to be, and that's okay.
Really determine what it's going to be based on my listen because it will be and this is the funny part. It is, track listing-wise, the longest album far and away. And it's the easiest one for me to go ahead and notch exactly what's up top for me without even giving it a second thought.
And many would agree with you, by the way. Many would.
That's crazy to think about, especially how long it is. But secondarily to that, I'm looking forward to In the Shelter He Did Not Felter, visiting track number 13, Boogie with Stu, because it's been a while. So
There's a lot of shit to unpack with that inside joke. Oh, my God. I have always had a soft spot for Boogie with Stu. And now it's not going to be my Spiciest Biscuit. But I think the fun of a double album is that part of the appeal of it, like the White Album and like with Exile on Main Street, you have your classics, but it's padded with filler. But that's part of the appeal. So I'm excited to talk about filler and a band that was basically unloading the vaults. So the things that didn't get put on Houses of the Holy or Led Zeppelin 4 or 3, they put on this. And Physical Graffiti is rightly acclaimed as one of the best double albums of all time, and we will talk about that next week. But yeah, this is a good conversation because Houses of the Holy, it's unique. It's fun. It's not perfect. It's not a masterpiece. I don't think, at least. But it is a band at their peak, and at its best, it's all the Zeppelin that you could want. And even at its worst, it's enjoyable. They didn't take themselves too seriously. I like that.
I wonder too, are we gonna be able to tackle physical graffiti top to bottom in one pod?
I think so. Yeah. So we will expedite the track by track breakdown.
Got it.
I mean, listen, do we need to spend 5 minutes on Boogie with Stu? No. I like Boogie with Stu, but it is what it is.
We might. Could spend 8 minutes on just the background of what a stew is.
Well,
yeah.
Shit, bad example. Let me think. Down by the Seaside.
For sure. No,
I
you're
like
right.
that song, but, it's what it is.
There's going to be elements here of songs that have corresponded with pop culture today. Different things. I'm looking, dude, every time we do this, we end an episode, and I quickly look forward at the track listing of the next album that I'm going to listen to tomorrow morning as I go get coffee, take the kids to daycare, and I'm like, this has to be the same feeling like our dad's had. It's like I'm staring another album in the face that it's like, oh yeah, like we're on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think my Spiciest Biscuit is going to, I don't think you're going to have any idea. And by the way, we have to do side A, B, C, or D.
Right.
Which is going to be fun. I don't know if we're ever going to do a triple album, but
yeah, it's cool. And yeah, good times, man. I think we did that album justice, though. Like
yeah, I think so. I think that we appropriately placed it in Zeppelin's discography. It is a very good album with some very high highs and some kind of confusing, but it's also a band that had the ability to do that in 1973. And in 1975, if you're going to argue what was the absolute peak of their popularity, stadium tours, biggest band in the world, unquestionably, talk about a blank check. Any band that can do a double album and put whatever the hell they want to on it, that's a blank check right there. And that's what they did with Physical Graffiti, probably to greater success than they did with Houses of the Holy.
We're here, man. We got 2 more to go.
No, 3, 4.
4 more to go.
Well, because here's what we're going to do, for just as a quick recap. We're going to do Physical Graffiti, we're going to do Presence, and In Through the Outdoor. The 4th and final one is Coda, which is going to kind of give us, I think, a nice ability to recap Zeppelin kind of as a whole. So we'll do a little bit of the album. We'll do the Spiciest, Biscuit, Dustiest, Crumpet, all that stuff. But it will more be to maybe we rank the albums top to bottom. We pick our all-time favorite Spiciest Biscuit, our favorite album cover, just things like that. So that will be more of an encapsulation before we go on to our second artist, which has nothing to do with Led Zeppelin.
Yep. Looking forward to it. And it's going to be perfect timing for the happenings of what we're going to be experiencing in that moment ourselves.
Hey, don't forget Steely Dan. I would be interested in talking about them sometime. Don't forget them.
I won't. I actually won't at all, because I think you and I would heavily enjoy that, and it would allow you the platform to discuss your thoughts on them, because I'll never forget coming back from that show at the United Center when I experienced them live, and when Donald Fagen just like busted my brain, and I was like, dude, I just got back from Chicago with my parents and went to a show with my aunt and uncle, and it was fucking awesome. And you're like, who'd you see? And I was like, Steely Dan. And you're like, do you want a burger? And I was like, yeah. And that was it. That was like the conversation. So I would love to do that pod with you.
What a George Foreman burger, charred to shit. Here you go. Nice. Tell me about the show. No, I mean, Steely Dan, that would be actually a really good series, because they don't have too many studio albums, and all of them are like works of art, like they're just very meticulously constructed, and yeah, that'd be good.
They do hired guns, so there's a lot of people to talk about that are behind the scenes that you don't know about. But yeah, no doubt. Hey, welcome to Drop the Needleheads with Schmiggy and Yahtzee. The records spin, the bourbon flows, and the breakdowns are deeper than the inside of John Bonham's bass drum. We appreciate y'all listening. For the record, this is episode 5.
God
House
damn.
of the Holy. We are wrapping it up and going to put a bow on this one for the evening. I've had a great time. I speak for Schmiggy and I in saying we absolutely enjoy this. And now that it's getting some legs behind it and we're live, currently with 3 episodes on the market, get it where you listen to it. We are super excited about this and appreciate all you that tune in. Give us some feedback. Reddit, Spotify, Apple Pod.
At Needleheads Pod on Instagram, Facebook, on Reddit. We're posting basically whatever band we're covering, we're posting on that band's subreddit as we are with Led Zeppelin. So, but yeah, we appreciate the feedback, and be sure to find us where whatever platform you use for that. And while you're listening to us, drop a line or drop a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. What that does is help us get discovered by other music fans as well. Ben, see you next week for Physical Graffiti.
Looking forward to it, man. I'll start the journey tomorrow morning. Can't promise that I'll end it in timely fashion like these other albums, but looking forward to it, man. And I will see you then.
And we'll see you all next week as well. This is Drop the Needleheads.
Adios. Cheers.